Hey everybody, welcome to Hash Church episode 90. Just got a little Luton fire in the background, some sweet trichomes. I'm going to do some invitations while we listen to a little bit of this track and we get this 90 micron Hash Church dialed in. We'll send this out. And then we will send this out. Geez, I hope everyone's doing great today. Turn that down. All right. Bong rip. I'm about to invite that character in right now. Cannabinoid receptors in the brain and body. Happiness for you and me. All right, where are we at? Tetrahydrocannabinol. Okay. Mark Scialdone will probably be in very quickly. Turn this down a little bit because it's a little bit loud. Dried to perfection. Dried to perfection. Bubbleman spitting verses. Yeah, it's a good tune, Barcode Teacup. Welcome everyone in the chat room. We have over 240 people watching. I want to say hi to Ontario Hashish, Gigawatt Kush, Old Brands, Corey, Jimbo Cats. You're a little bit insane, but I'll say hi to you as well. Steve O'Burns, Realist, D. Old Brands, Kyle. And there he is, Mr. Mark Scialdone, first as always with Mr. Skunkman Sam. How we doing, guys?
Fine.
Fine. Well, excellent. It's Hash Church episode 90. I hope you guys got your 90 micron hashes ready for the day. Welcome, Todd.
Good morning, bro.
How are you doing this morning?
Feeling angry.
Oh no, angry or hangry?
No, dude, it's just like somebody made a comment, you ever get, you remember when we could wake up in this country and not hear about somebody getting shot up the night before and fucking, yeah, me either.
Yeah.
And, I think we're all getting just sick of it, we're all getting just sick of it.
I hear you, dude. I got to give my buddy Andrew a shout out. He passed away just a couple days ago. Hadn't seen him for a long time. Got some esophageal cancer, and I wanted to give him a shout out on Hash Church today. His wife Patty and his 3 children were left behind. It was a very sad story, but I think it's perspective. And whether you're getting shot up or whether you're getting horrible diseases and getting taken out, life is fleeting, and it's precious. And so you want to take care and enjoy as many days as you can. Don't get caught up in you can get caught up in the negative, but hey, today for 4 hours we're going to be laying out the positive, the 90 micron. Welcome, Etienne. How are you, my friend?
Oh, I'm doing well, sir. As well as can be, given the bad news this morning, but doing all right.
Yeah, not too good, huh?
Did everybody hear that Trump just announced he's going to legalize marijuana in all 50 states?
What is that, April 1st?
It actually is funny. And sadly, it'll give him traction.
I am now officially a Trump supporter.
Did you notice that Sam I Am is sitting in a 90 micron bag?
That's awesome.
He doesn't have his headphones on, though.
Well,
I know. He lost them. He got too high last night.
I'm crushed. He looked cooler than anyone else with the headphones on, though.
Todd, we can bitch about that to one another in private chat.
That's funny.
Oh, I will.
Oh, I know. So yeah, today I put the invitation out to some new folks. I'm not sure how many of them will be getting it, as they're all newbies, but I sent out the email to Cuban. Haven't seen Cuban in a while. I sent it out to Solventless Mind, an Instagram account that's just been killing it lately. Hopefully he'll be able to come in. The Dank Dutchess, who works with Frenchy sometimes, I sent her the link. I sent the link to Dab Logic, to Rasta Ronnie, to Wook Sauce Winery, all Instagram accounts that have impressed me when I saw the photos that they were posting. So hopefully some of those people will make it out. I also am trying to get into the third gen family. I spoke with them briefly. They're having a little bit of trouble. They're up in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, hopefully it all works out. All right, here we go. Dab Logic is one email that I never got to send out, so I'm going to send that out real quick. And, well, I'm looking forward to this Hash Church episode 90 today, I got to say. What about you guys?
It's one of my all-time favorite microns. How can you not be excited about it, you know? So much goodness I've had over the years. So I can only thank you and others for that statistical micron.
And another historic year of Grateful Dead, right? I mean, 1990 was a big Grateful Dead year, so 90.
Last year with Brent.
Last year with Brent, yeah. Brent checked out. Yeah, definitely.
Yep, true. 90 micron. I'll tell you, the 90 micron bag didn't always exist. We originally had, we had a 3-bag kit, turned into a 4-bag kit, eventually got to 5 and 6 and even 7. But even at 7, we had no 90 micron bag. We had this giant jump that went from 120 microns and it went down to 73. And of course, everyone loved the 73 because it gave you a nice big chunk and it produced absolute golden quality. People were a little bit shocked when I added the 90. They were like, man, this shit it's stealing from my 73. And, you know, in a sense it is, but really what it's doing is it's unveiling those 90 micron or, you know, 74 to 90 micron head range. And
Really? People were not receptive to the 90 initially?
Well, you know what? I'll tell you straight up, Etienne. People were not receptive to every single bag I added. First, when I had 3 bags, the isolator camp would be like, well, you don't need 3 bags. We can do the same thing with 2 bags. And then when I added 4 and when I added 5, it was constantly the same thing. The community reacted like, oh, he's trying to sell us more bags. He's trying to sell us more bags. And that just was not the case at all. It was because people would be like, why do I need 6 bags? Why can't I do it with 2?
Unveiling is the perfect verb, Mark. Unveiling.
So then, Mark, what made you decide on the 90 and what made you add the 90?
Well, I mean, keep in mind, we were playing around with screen sizes. We were using different screen sizes and seeing what they did. And we were playing around with 100, and we played around with 110, and we played around with 90, and we played around with 80, and it got to the point where when we hit that 90, it just seemed to be this incredible sweet spot in the way that it pulled this enormous amount of heads from the 73. The 120 was still intact, so it wasn't being affected. This was all stuff that fell through the 120 bag, but definitely no denying the quality that would come from that bag.
What I will do is I will breed varieties that only have 90 micron resin heads. And therefore, you won't need any other bags.
Now you're talking.
So did you have an R&D team for the 90, or is this just something that you decided, okay, we've tried these, the 90 is going to be the one?
We R&D'd a whole variety of bags. Keep in mind, at that point in time, we had probably gone through dozens of numbers because we were already up to 7 bags. This was probably around 2004, 2005. Welcome to the dank Dutchess. Sheila just came into the room. I'm not sure if she's going to be able to get her microphone and camera going, as we were not able to do the troubleshooting yesterday like I wanted to. Everyone's very busy, but she does have a headset, and she said she should be able to get it up and running. Welcome D420K as well. Saw you pop into the room.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Good morning, Sunday. Bong rip, everyone.
Bong rip it shall be.
Bong rip.
Yeah, bong rip. That's probably a good idea. Should I turn my bong on? Is that what's going on? I got a nice collection of pipes here today. I got the straight fab, big old classic mothership right there, the big ass mothership.
I'm doing the same. I've got my straight fab going today.
And then I got my little mini Taurus as well.
Oh,
the size difference.
That's what she said.
That's what she said. Hey, welcome, Dutchess. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. And yourself?
It's funny that we never, ever, ever make derogatory statements like jokes about women, and then literally we have one woman come in and we make a joke about. So apologize for that.
No, don't apologize. I mean, it does matter. Size does matter.
Well, there you go. You from her, and that's got to be. So, welcome to Hash Church. I've been checking you out on Instagram, checking out your wares. You're making some beautiful hash. You've been working with Frenchy, I see.
Yes, Frenchy taught me back in 2014. It was a totally random thing. When I met Frenchy, it was my husband and I were deciding to move from Florida, and I had the amount of hash I had seen up until that moment was like about this amount. So, ooh, how come I can hear everybody? Oh, sorry.
Oh, that was Chris's mic. We just needed to mute Chris's mic from the clear. He came in with an echo going on, so you're good to go now.
Things happen, but like I said, I didn't know very much about hash. I knew a lot about weed. Being in Florida, we had our interaction with cannabis, and let's just leave it at that for a while. But I wanted to live in California. I was tired of the paranoia, and when I met Frenchy and his hash, it was just like so ridiculously beautiful, and I didn't know much about it. But I love to communicate, and he likes that, so he asked me to write for Weed World magazine. And in writing about hash, I needed to learn how to make hash. So then I learned how to make hash from Frenchy. It was really simple like that. And I didn't know he was that big of a deal. Like, I had no idea. I just knew he was a passionate man who loved hash.
He is a passionate man. That's awesome that you write for Weed World. I used to write for Phil back in the day, back in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, so all I write about is hash experiences. I smoke really great hash and then go on a trip and write about it. And that's fantastic. Travel hash.
No, that's a beautiful thing. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's nice to, I like the idea of getting more women on the hash making experience. You know, it seems to be locked into, you know, when you look back at older cultures, like you see the Suomi Laval's book, Hashish, which Todd has on his counter right back there. You see in Lebanon and some of the other countries, it was often the women who were doing the dry and who were processing these resins. I know in hemp, when they say the strongest job known to man, which was the, I guess the retting, the hand breaking of the hemp.
Threshing. The threshing.
Yeah, the threshing, exactly. So that was also often done by women. You rarely saw photos of men doing the hardest job known to man. It was often done by women as well.
You ever see a woman beat a rug? See, there it goes.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So, Madam Dutchess, how old were you when you were first turned on to cannabis?
I was really old, 23. And I can say I'm really old like that because I'm 37 now, but 23. I was out of college. I had met this great guy, now my husband. He was so smart, but Nancy Reagan told me say no to drugs.
Sorry about that. Just had to mute Wook Sauce. These are all some new folks that are coming in, so they're not quite aware of making sure the mic is kept down. But you're good to go again.
Oh, I was just saying that I was new to the situation. Like my whole life was math and science education. I went to the best high school in New York. Then I went to college on scholarship. Nancy Reagan said, "Preserve your brain. Say no to drugs." You know. So, but I met this guy who was so into cannabis, and I couldn't figure out why are you so smart, but all you want to do is smoke weed all the time. And it was a piece of glass that got me into smoking cannabis. I just saw a piece of glass that was the most just amazing. I had to have it as part of my body. And as soon as I took that one toke, I'm telling you, I said, these dudes lied. I said a lot more, bad words than that, but I said that, and from then, I haven't looked back. I have smoked pretty much every day since 2002.
Do you know what that gene was? Do you remember what that first genetic was?
That I smoked, it was, actually, I do know, it was a sour diesel.
Oh yeah, hitting the sour diesel. And what about the pipe? Who blew the pipe? I want to pick this pipe.
It wasn't anything fancy. It was like it was just like it wasn't anything fancy. It looked like a teardrop. It probably was bought at the corner smoke shop. Nothing amazing, but at that moment, cannabis spoke to me, and I realized I was missing out on the conversation.
I'm glad that you got turned on, and that Frenchy seems like as good as any person to be to mentor underneath and get learning.
Indeed.
Dutchess, do you know if Frenchy's on his way to my house today?
Yes, he should be on your way. And Belle should be dropping him off, so he should be on his way. He's coming. He's coming.
Thank you for the update. Okay.
What you showing off there, Etienne?
Well, actually, I'm smoking some Bubbleman rosin sour diesel. So some stuff that we will be shortly getting into. So since you said sour diesel,
Oh yeah. Well, hey, I guess we should be welcoming Wook Sauce. Your camera's not working. Not sure if your mic was working because I had to mute you. It was quite loud. It sounded like you were on a phone or something. But welcome to Chris as well from the Clear.
How's it going? Can you guys hear me?
We're honing in. Yeah, we can hear you great. We got we got 9 people in already, and man, I swear I invited another 10 or 15. So we'll make room over the course of the day for the panel to switch it up. We do have 700 people watching already here at 9:16, so I want to welcome all of you guys and gals into the room. I hope that this Hash Church episode 90 is going to be everything that you hoped it would be. I know that I've had a little bit of sort of nervous energy, just wanting to make it a real special episode where we give you some good knowledge and yeah, you can...
every episode is special, Bubbleman. You've been providing knowledge for 90-plus episodes, thanks to everybody on the panel, etc. So thank you from everyone. Just thank you.
Yeah, it's been incredible. It's been good fun getting out this information to well, who would have known that people were just so thirsty for this knowledge right now. It's really nice. I got 90 Sour Diesel B-Man as well. Someone's saying in the chat room. Chat room's moving like wicked fast today, so there's definitely some good folks in the room. I think it's time to have a little...
Hey, Mark, can I ask Chris a question?
Please do.
While I got him on the phone, talk about some knowledge. Hey, Chris, how you doing, buddy? Good to see you again. So I've actually curious on what your thoughts are on what the nomograph predicts for the boiling point of THC based on your guys' data and your experience. You know, people take a lot of, you know, solace in everything that, you know, Meshulam measured, but they forget that he measured the boiling point under a high vacuum, right? And so the
How can they forget that?
I don't know. It's, you know, anybody who reads the paper, it says it right there that this boiling point was measured at this pressure. But, you know, again, not everyone reads the chemical literature, but the chemists like me do. So, I mean, we can tell you that, again, the boiling point that's widely reported for THC is under a vacuum of 0.05 torr. So, and, you know, people are always showing, you know, their distillation apparatus and they're talking about different things, but the most important thing is to make sure that we know that when you're I guess setting your nail temperature, or that when you're dabbing, that you're dabbing at the right temperature, that you're actually going to vaporize the THC. So I guess this is somewhat of a dispute now. I guess, you know, a lot of people thinks that there's a, again, sort of mistake in the literature, that Meshulam was mistaken. But I wonder, Chris, since you guys have done this for a while, what do you observe? Do your observations coalesce with what Meshulam observes? Is he muted?
You are muted. You need to unmute yourself, Chris.
Unmute so we can hear yourself.
That better?
There we go. We can hear you now. Go.
Awesome. Yeah. So basically, I think what ends up happening is that since you've got complex mixtures that aren't just THC, it's very uncommon that someone is just distilling a THC fraction. I mean, you've got other stuff in there, so you have different boiling points because of the mixtures. Obviously, like agitation and temperature make a big difference. I think until someone goes and I could be wrong, Mark. I think I was looking into this a couple days ago. There's like a piece of like vapor equilibrium glassware you can utilize to like figure out the true vapor pressure or something. I just don't. I think it's in a tight range.
Yeah.
Say that again?
I think it's called the isotenoscope.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's why we have marks in the world.
Well, a lot of people who've done physical chemistry laboratory, that's the way that you measure vapor pressure of, you know, solvent mixtures. But the point is that you know, the boiling point of the major active ingredient, which is THC, is a function of the molecule itself and its surface tension and a lot of properties inherent to the molecule, and you can't change that just by whether you're heating up a nail or whether you're heating up a distillation pot. The thermal energy which is transferred into the material is what's making it vaporize, and so it's going to vaporize consistently at the same temperature, at the same pressures. It's just one of those things that, again, maybe the nail temperature is different because exactly what Chris is saying, you're partitioning a lot of the most volatile, fragrant components of the hash, but not necessarily all the THC itself. And some of the char that might remain behind would just be material that just stays on the nail for too long. It just thermally oxidizes and never really gets fully vaporized.
I just had to mute Chris again if he's trying to reply to anything you said. I've asked him as well if he could get a headset because his office is got a lot of fans and pumps and background
He's
sound.
in the lab, Mark.
I know. I actually said lab when I typed to him, so it's headphones would be amazing. If he could pull it off, that would be great. I do want to welcome Dab Logic into the room. For those of you that don't know, these guys are just killing it on Instagram right now. One of the accounts that sort of has elevated hashish photography on Instagram. They're doing really great things. So it's nice to have you here with us, Dab Logic.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure if my mic's working or what, but
your shit's working perfectly. I unmuted you right at the right time, and it actually worked. So
perfect, great.
Yeah. Dude.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm actually here right now alone. I have 2 other partners that work with me as well. They're out at the moment, so it's just me today.
Awesome. Well, we welcome you. You guys are in Colorado, correct?
Yep. Coming out of Colorado, right now our facility's in Denver, and outside of that, I mean, we're trying to find more space, but yeah.
Nice. Well, you guys are absolutely killing it. I'm not sure who you have growing that fire with you, but that is definitely some great looking final product.
No, yeah, the material we're working with is some of the best here in the state that we've been able to actually find. The company we work with is called All Greens. They're as well out of Denver, small family-run business, and everything's grown with love by hand. And yeah.
Yeah, I can tell from the end product that you guys definitely have some really good access to fire.
Yeah, All Greens is they're allowing us to take their product and just do what we do. We take everything's fresh frozen, whole plant. They chop down whole plants and bring them over to the lab and freezers, and it's been working out great.
Well, walk us through a batch if you don't mind. I just this is Hash Church 90. Any little things that you've changed or created for yourself that you guys do a little bit differently? Are you guys doing the freeze dryer thing? Are you guys doing RO water? What's the deal with Dab Logic Fire?
Well, basically, what our process is what our process entails is we start with ice. It all starts with there. We make all the ice by hand. We use RO water. We just have 5 or 6, small freezers that we kind of store our ice in.
And how are you making your ice? You guys making ice in your own custom sort of molds? Or are you just doing regular old ice molds or bottles breaking up? Like,
it's an ice mold. We try to find one that's about 1 inch by 1 inch, square. Yeah, cube.
Yeah, dude.
That's the best way. I mean, the best we've found. We've tried every ice out there, every ice shape, every ice machine, every ice, anything you can have, and it's...
People thought I was nuts in the beginning, dude, when I would tell them about certain types of ice, and they'd be like, dude, ice is ice. And I was just like, listen, if you think that, you could do a PhD on ice and the way ice
absolutely,
water freezes, and you could probably do 7 PhDs on it, to be honest. It's just not quite as simple as it seems that people assume. But I'm with you. I'm also with a nice, like, at least inch by an inch cube, perfect, just square cube. That seems that those edges really get the job done when it comes off to an efficient isolation process.
No, absolutely. You know, the edge itself ends up kind of rounding off in the water and kind of makes just a nice when the cubes kind of, they can take the plant material and it kind of just pushes through real nice. And I found if you use longer ones, they don't typically have the nice agitation whereas if they're more equal in size on all sides, when you agitate them, they spin better and they work better and they feel better, and that whole thing is just it works so much better with the square cube.
Yeah, Johnny B is in the chat mentioning, I thought you liked the Half Moon Ice, B-Man. Well, Johnny B, I always did have an appreciation for the Half Moon Ice, but more so for how hard the ice freezes than the actual shape of the ice. If you've ever seen those Half Moon...
Oh,
whatever reason. What's that?
It cut out for a moment.
You froze up there, Bubbleman.
Was I freezing out? I think I was just stuttering.
Can you restutter that thought?
No, I'm just going to like move on to the next thing now and welcome Adam from the West Coast Concentrate. I love that all these hash makers are in the room right now. I do really have an appreciation for the hash maker.
Hey, thanks for the invite, guys. Happy to be here today.
Dude, well, I mean, happy to have you. There's no denying that you are well represented here at my house. Of course, we got some... Why don't we smoke some 90 micron freeze-dry?
Do it up. I know you were saying you like the freeze-dried a little bit different for photography. You prefer the sieve stuff. Personally, I don't do any macro photos, but from the few pictures I have taken, it is very different to look at for sure. The freeze-dried versus the dry sieved. But I don't know. I think they both have their place for sure. The freeze-dried again is going to have obviously less moisture in it. Just judging by the rooms that we have to dry in, so that's a bonus for us, being able to really control the environment that we are drying our hash in. But I do also like the look of the little balls. It's a cool look. It's a classic look.
Well, you know what? It's funny because it seems like you're saying, you know, more and more. And I saw Solvent is More. Joseph O'Connor posted this just the other day about this color thing, like people, and it goes back to color. Like people, how could you not be so stoked on this beautiful? Like I have an affinity for the darker, deeper colors, and I'm sure the Dutchess will have an interesting conversation about this because she's a student of Frenchy, and Frenchy, of course, is all about really working his hash, and even if it's a lighter colored hash, he's going to end up working it until it gets that sort of nice caramel or darker amber perspective. But we were talking the other day, Adam and I were talking the other day, and basically talking about the differences between the colors of the hash. I just got to mute your loud. Really working his hash. Boop, there we go. The difference between the colors of the hash, you know, you have this sort of younger generation coming up, and they want to see this lighter colored hash. They want to see this as light as possible. Whereas when I first saw the freeze-dried hash, I was kind of like, oh yeah, it's a beautiful color, but it just reminds me of something that's premature versus, you know, because of what I'm used to and what I know when it comes to hashish, I know that properly cured and properly grown resins are going to be darker than lighter. You know, when I first saw Skunkman Sam's hash under the microscope, it was like, if go back and Google 99.9% Skunkman Sam, the heads were almost like reddish orange, you know, because it's like he grew that shit to perfection, he cured that shit, and then he processed it. Whereas when I photographed Cuban stuff in Jamaica, the heads were almost all white, like almost completely white. So this is a very different level, and I guess maybe a different time. You know, we're seeing that people want this lighter colored hash. What do you, the panel, think about the lighter hash versus darker hash, and whether there's really any reality other than the reality.
I think it looks prettier, and the hash that you saw of mine that was dark was because it was probably 10 years old. But it had been frozen, but it was still 10 years old.
Well, wouldn't hashishin be created by the pressing, correct?
Either heat or light or age or something.
Heat,
I've
light,
always thought of
air,
hashish.
oxygen.
Holy frozen Batman. Bubbleman.
Did he freeze up again?
I did freeze up again.
It's the ice.
It's the yeah, it's the ice. Damn, I hate that freezing up thing. Nonetheless,
hey, Bubbleman, Fish's song, it's ice, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's ice. They knew even back in the '80s. Those.
Well, I think this is a debate we've had for decades over the lighter or the darker. Because originally, hash you could only find, or at least early on for me, was just the darker, that type of Afghani, that really waxy type of hash. Was what you could really find on the streets unless you made it yourself. I never, on a street deal, ever bought any type of blonde hash in any way, shape, or form. It wasn't until I was around more professionals that I ever even saw that sort of quality.
So even back then, you were still in search of the blonde, though.
Didn't know blonde existed. I mean, I did realize once, if really good hash, if you broke the outside, it was still that darker inside, but it was still toward that amber. So it did lead me to want to try to find something lighter, but never was it ever available to find.
Yeah, because I remember as a kid, and not a young kid, but in my mid-teens and everything, there was no melt around, at least in my circles, or anyone that I had known. I'm sure there was smelt, in various countries around the world, and people were making it for sure. But I was just always looking for that blonde, even that lighter brown colored, like Moroccan, or even some hash from Kabul I've seen that was actually pretty. It was very dark and almost black on the outside and sticky, and when you broke it open, it had it almost looked like ripping open a marshmallow, like a black marshmallow, and on the inside it was all golden and it just
white.
Yeah, it was just kind of I don't know. It was just something that we had always sought after, and I don't know if that's society.
Well, that makes sense about the hashishin reaction, right? Because if the hash is exposed to light, the part that's exposed to light will sort of photo bleach. Think of it that way. Anything that's exposed to light will turn that color, but then deep inside where light can't get to, it can't happen.
Which is why you often will see the different swirling effects of hash that has been allowed to dry a little bit, but not completely. And so the outside will turn a darker color, and if someone comes and grabs that hash and they rip it open and then they roll it up into their hand again, you'll get this marbly sort of effect sometimes. And I've always thought of that as an uneven cure. Because back in the day, it was happening with wetter hash.
Yes.
Well, you definitely, of course, do not want to.
Oh, we got you.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. You definitely, of course, don't want to be rolling wet hash. I mean, that's disgusting. Wet hash is going to be moldy. It's going to lose potency after a while. But one other time that you will see marbling, just so that people aren't a little bit like, oh my gosh, there's marbling. It must be wet. One other time is so Frenchy and I do this full spectrum hash, and when you press full spectrum hash, because it's different sizes of the micron, often you will see that marbling look. So don't worry about that being wet, at least from us, because we're using the freeze dryer.
The photos.
So early on for me, I didn't see blonde until I was in Saudi Arabia and I saw blonde Lebanese. And then when I saw it, I didn't think it was real because I got a little slab of red and a little slab of blonde. And both of those, I was questioning if that were even cannabis until I actually smoked them, because I had only seen darker or blacker.
I was also, too, resin that is grown outdoors in the sun is always darker, depending on the variety, but it's always darker than under lights in an indoor building. When you grow under lights, your resin comes out almost clear to white, whereas in a greenhouse, it's always lightly reddish, brownish, tannish. Lightly, at least.
Right. Hey, welcome, Todd and Frenchy in the house.
Viva la Frenchy. Unmute yourselves, guys.
Hey, good morning.
Salut.
Good morning, Frenchy.
Oui, Bubbleman parle français aussi. Je suis français aussi.
Canadien, bien sûr.
Tout parle français.
Can I ask Sam, do you think that that's just a little embedded oxidization from the UV light?
Yeah, I think it's the light and/or ultraviolet.
Flavonoids.
No,
The flavonoids, the most highly colored compounds in there.
If you put cannabis and dry it in sunlight,
Even if in there indoors or outdoors, and that's the only real difference is UV and the light spectrum.
Yeah.
All right, there we go. Interesting. We got 800 people watching the hash discussion today here on Bubbleman's World and Hash Church. We got some great people in the room. Chris, I'm sorry I keep muting you. You have an incredibly loud background sound. I don't know. I mean, when you're ready to talk, for sure, we'll deal with it. But if anyone else is talking, it definitely has to be muted. I don't know if Wook never made it back. We still got Dab Logic in the house. I still want to hear more from you as well, Dab Logic, because, man, you guys are making fire over there.
Sorry, I'm muted. I'm about to take a dab. 1 second here.
Damn, look at that banger.
Boy, that's a trough and a half, huh?
That is a trough and a half. Jesus.
Bringing the whole herd over for that one.
Yeah, look at that dab just disappear.
I haven't tried any of those troughs before. I've tried like the classic bangers and some of the mothership buckets and things like that. But how do you guys find that the trough is, as far as that shape, is it a better shape for heat retention, or does it clean easier? I'm not sure what the is it just a fun shape, you know?
It's not necessarily, it cleans harder actually, but what is nice is the oil doesn't have corners to really sit in, so it kind of bubbles along on a flat surface that's kind of rounded and gives it a better almost surface area per se to bubble off of, and runs down the top of this nail and kind of just oils in the bottom, and I don't know, I like it a lot.
So you have Logic. Sorry.
No, go ahead. It's okay.
What's your favorite micron?
90 mic.
Now, why 90? You've played with them all. What makes 90 special?
What makes 90? I think it's the perfect size. I think after 90 micron, this doesn't have 100% scientific evidence or anything like that, but after 90 micron, the head is actually getting smaller and degrading. Like, it's not like it starts at 70 and as this dark red thing and then slowly opens up to a clear, nice, bigger head. What happens is actually there are nicely colored 70 micron that get bigger and bigger and bigger, and they turn into 120s and 160s, and then slowly those start to shrivel back down into and degrade and just become smaller, maybe more condensed and dense, but the quality is actually less.
It's definitely a different profile. Without using the word degrade, because like you said, we don't really know scientifically, but we do know for sure through bioassay by separating the glands out, hitting them all together, hitting them in different ratios, and hitting them, most importantly, separately, because that's really where I learned a lot. Before I smoked 8-bag bubble bag hash to learn, I had mostly smoked hash that was all together. There was no real separation. I wasn't able to look at something and see all the different components, which, you know, back in the early days, very often I did the Frenchy style. I'd take a little bit of each one and I'd put it all together and I'd make a nice sort of full spectrum hash. But I always found myself going back to the 73 and the 90 and the 120. Even though I'd be like, okay, well, let's just see what this, because at first we said the 25 micron was like immature or broken heads, and it seems as though what more accurately it is smaller heads that produce a unique and different cannabinoid profile than the ones that are larger do. And so it's interesting when you start learning about how to separate out the gland sizes And I don't tell people separate them out because they have to be separate. I say separate them out because you can learn. And it doesn't matter in the end if you want to put them all back together or take 2 out and just put 5 back or whatever it is you want to do. It gives you the ability to do that once you've separated them all out and you can see.
What we used to do years ago was we used a particle size separator so that we could see exactly where the most fractions were at what size. And then we used, depending on the variety and how it was grown. I mean, there is no 90 that's the best for everything. It just ain't true.
Of course. No, absolutely. I think mainly with the trichome head is it they do age. I mean, the longer you leave them on there, they will age, and they stay big for a while, but they eventually get smaller. Eventually, they will get smaller.
I prefer them when they're dried, cured, and aged, so that you can handle and process them with some degree. When it's too fresh, I find it a bloody nightmare.
Oh, it is. It's absolutely. I mean, we work with the freshest. We actually try to get the trichome head at its peak point in size wise, the size of the head. It might not be color or cannabinoid ratio or whatever, but as far as size, we try to harvest at the peak of where majority of the trichome heads are of the bigger microns.
I tried to
Can I
harvest.
throw something out there though? Back in '97, I had over 50 varieties in Bel Air growing, and when I used to shake them on my rototap with the different size sieves, I used to always get different size glands.
You're froze, Todd.
I'm froze.
I hear you perfect.
Yeah, I've got you good too.
Oh, okay. And I always used to get an assortment of different size resin glands from different cultivars. It was never consistent.
It's really interesting about all of you guys and the size of resin head. You're hunting ripeness in size. The resin head is made like a fruit. So if you think of it, when you shake your trim to get your resin head to fall, if the resin head is made like a fruit, when you shake the tree just a tiny bit, you get the ripest fruit falling down. And then you shake a little bit harder, you have a second dimension of ripeness. And then a third time, another level. And I wash my trim 12 times. So I don't hunt the melt in size. I hunt the melt in level of ripeness that the whole plant is giving me. I have the hunting territory that is huge. Compared to you, when you go for a size, you got a slice of the spectrum. You got a slice of the totality of the cannabinoid and terpene. Do you think that slice, doesn't matter how melty, represents the whole dimension of ripeness and the plant is giving you? No, it's just a slice. I don't think it's. I think you.
Well, maybe you just misunderstood me. What I meant is that majority of the trichome heads. I'm not saying in no plant in the world will produce all 90 micron head or all 120 head or all 70 head, but there are plants that, when grown in specific ways under specific conditions, will produce more of a specific size micron head. It doesn't mean
that's absolutely true.
And cannabinoid profile. And that's why when I first smoked Sam's, which was like, it definitely wasn't what I would say a huge variety of different size heads. They were really like all close to almost all the same size. I was just kind of like looking at them like, how did he get all of these heads that look like the same? Like I just can't wrap my head around it. And it was the strongest hash I've ever smoked in my life.
Exactly.
Without a shadow of a doubt. The strongest I've ever smoked in my life. But that's the beauty about when we separate and we get, as Frenchy says, a slice, we're actually getting a large amount of information. And if you did your light, you know, when you do that real, like, let's go for the ripest fruit, if you took those heads that you got out of that really gentle first bounce or run or whatever you want to call it, and you actually measured those trichome heads, I think you'd be surprised at the variety of size. Wouldn't be maybe as large as you think, but it might be a much smaller gauge of the size variety. Size definitely has a place in hash making, whether or not it's just to learn and to see what you have, or whether or not, you know, the importance for me was when I met people who said, wow, you know, we couldn't get the appetite stimulant out of this medicine, but when we turned it into hash and we smoked just the 73, you know, my dad ate a whole chocolate cake that night. So I also noticed that the medical profile of the plant could be isolated by different size gland heads, and that intrigued me greatly back in the day.
Also, hashish really has different varieties really have a different propensity for being able to fall off easy from the dry cured plant material. Some you just touch the plant like sleeve stack and the resin just falls off. Other ones they're really, really difficult to dry sift, and the resin just doesn't want to fall off.
Mm-hmm. Not only that, but the size of the heads are huge differences in different areas of the world. For me, growing indoors and making hash with indoor cultivars, we saw a very general sort of thing. It was constantly the 90 and the 73 bag that most people were favoring, whereas when I got product sent to me via Australia and they were growing strains like the Mullumbimby Madness outside under the extremely hot Australian sun, they were finding most of their material was in the 25 micron bag, and that was the full melt. That was their 90 micron bag, and I was just like, what? The 25 micron bag is your 90 micron bag? And yeah, we just get these tiny, tiny little heads, but I could attest that the hash was absolutely spectacular, like as fire gets.
Sam, you were saying something about the sleeve stack just falling off of the plant, the resin. Do you think that is due to maybe the terpene profile? Like, do you find that strains that have falling off?
I'm not sure if it's a terpene profile or whether it's a basic difference in that particular clone plant, whatever. But I do know that extremely greasy resin always has more trouble falling off.
For sure. I was just more maybe not the terpene profile, but does it have a specific, does it have other qualities that are the same as other resin that falls off easily?
Well, I guess number one falls off pretty easy. Sleeve stack falls off pretty easy. I'm sure everybody knows a variety that if you're dry sifting, it's really pretty easy to get the dry sift. Other varieties, it's like you work your balls off and you get hardly nothing.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, there it is. Skunkman Sam just shared his secret technique. He uses his balls.
Tiny little balls.
You heard it here on Hash Church episode 90.
Bigger balls work better.
Mark, I do have to just interject this one thing. You know, when we say, oh, we're doing full spectrums, you know, people say, oh, we love the 73, we love the 90, we love the 120. Okay, well, the 73, if you're only pulling the 73, that's 73 to 90. The 90 is 90 to 119, and the 120 is 120 to 159. Yep. The only difference is that we're pulling from the 45 all the way up until the 159. So I don't find that the cultivars that I'm running, often I'll find a lot in the 25, but I found some cultivars that were just amazing. One time I ran a 190 bag underneath my 220, and it was just like beyond par. But the way I see making full spectrum, and the reason why I really like it, besides the fact that Frenchy taught me, because I went through this period where I did separate my microns. I did, and I was like amazed. I'm telling you, the first time you do a 73 or a 90, you're like, oh my gosh.
You're learning.
You know?
Had you never done that, you would have never understood those subtle differences. And
for sure.
When you separate them, you still have the power to put them all back together. But when you don't separate them, you no longer have that power. So it's the best of both worlds by separating. You can still make full spectrum and put it all together in the end, or you can make different ratios or keep it separate if you were to find, say, one of those profiles really hit you, whether recreationally or medically or preventatively, whatever you're using it for, and that's what I like. I like more options rather than less.
Oh, so you're thinking of a mix and match. That's interesting, but that's
it enters a whole new world when you start actually playing around and creating your own profiles. It's quite fun, and if just learn.
Mark.
Yes.
Have you ever tried? You separate micron. I separate washes so that I have 15 different washes, 15 different dimension of ripeness.
Yes.
You know how much you learn from that?
Of course, I'm a dry sifter, Frenchy, so I do that exactly with dry sifting. I separate my dry sifting out based on maturity levels, exactly how I do it.
But dry sieving you don't do 15 times. With the machine, the water brings us a lot of power. The power to shake the tree, leaving nothing.
Yes.
And every shake, it's a dimension of ripeness. So when you have like 15 shake, and you can see how deep your grower is going into ripeness, how long he waits, and the size doesn't matter anymore. You're looking, I'm hunting the melt the same way than you do. The melt is how much resin is formed inside the resin head. It's not a question of size. Look at a fruit tree. You can have many color, many size, but ripeness is all over.
Well, it is a question of size. It is a question of size when you're separating it out by size. That's
yeah, but it's like, do you need to separate by size to hunt the melt when it's a ripeness that you're looking for?
I want to. So this is the beautiful thing about cannabis. We don't get everyone to do it the way we want to. We explore all the different opportunities, and then we choose the way we want to do it.
But
that's the beautiful thing about it.
You want to maximize the entourage effect. If you don't have the wholeness of the plant, the wholeness of all the ripeness that that plant is giving you, you're taking a slice. That's not the entourage anymore. You lose of the wholeness of the plant, if you see what I mean.
Also, too, Frenchy, when it comes to meltiness of hash, which people hold very high in regard, a lot of it actually has to do with the terpene level. When resin is high in terpenes, it is way more melty and bubbly, especially for dry sift.
That's for sure.
Well, it's funny you say that, actually, because some of the cultivars that we get to work with, Mextiza being one of them, it actually doesn't melt at all. And that may be our grower. It may be something that we're doing wrong, especially, but we do have a lot of trouble getting that particular strain to melt. And I know the heads are a bit smaller. They probably have a thicker wax membrane as well, but I would say it's a maximum 3-star. When almost everything else.
Do you like the quality?
I love the quality of the flavor, but I don't love the quality of the melt, I would say, or the actual dabbability of the hash.
I think one big thing as far as melt factor goes, as far as all microns, I mean, if you're growing your plant with synthetic fertilizer, synthetic nutrients, you're spraying pesticides, things like that, that's going to really affect your melt quality, you know.
Melt's a lot better, right?
No, but honestly, you know, growing organically or in that kind of setting where you're giving more to the plant to kind of produce the trichome, that will usually help with your melt.
What really helps with meltability is, number one, a good variety, high terpene content, a lot of THC because that melts pretty good. But
well, you mean THCA, right? Just to be accurate.
Correct. Yes, it's THCA.
Okay, thank you.
It's always been the same. The people who have always stood out, I wouldn't say are amazing hash makers. They are people who have relationships with amazing growers, and it's or are amazing growers themselves, because I'll tell you, from day one, when people were like, oh, Bubbleman, you're just like from another planet, it's like, no, I'm not. I just know great growers, or I can produce resin myself in my grow that produces great end product. Nicotine was the same way. Matt Rise was the same way. A whole variety of the people on the panel. If you don't have fire being given to you to make your hash, then you are not going to be making great hash.
The last factor for really good meltability, of course, is purity.
Yeah.
You know, if you've got 99.9% resin heads, it's going to melt and bubble a whole lot better than 80% resin heads.
Or even better than 93% resin heads. I couldn't believe the difference in that last 1 or 2%, particularly with dry sifted material, because of course, you know, the water is amazing in water hash, and as Frenchy was talking about going for the different full spectrums that he was talking about, he must understand that he's never going to get that full spectrum from water hash, because water is going to rob him of the water-soluble terpenes, and those terpenes are part of that spectrum. They are the entourage effect of the cannabinoids. So you really want to make sure you play around with some dry sifting if you want to experience the full spectrum of a plant that's exactly like what it was on the bud, without losing the water-soluble terpenes.
Marcus, aren't the terpene inside the resin head? Yeah. So, I mean, what you lose is the breaking point. If your membrane are not broken, you don't lose.
There's no doubt about it.
I have a question for you guys that have been bothering me for a long time, and you're all here. It's awesome. I have encountered many times a problem during the last 2 weeks of flowering. If somebody harvests 2 weeks earlier, I have no resin formed inside the resin head, even if the plant show on lab test THC. The same grower, the same genetics, the same room, waited 2 weeks, I have some goo that is beyond good. You know what I mean? There is something happening during those 2 weeks that I don't know what's going on.
Frenchy, have you tested both the THC and the terpene levels during that 2 week process to see if there's significant changes?
It's experience for the moment. From the same grower, I got trim. One is beyond great, and the other one, even if I rosin it, I get nothing out of it. But the plant is showing on lab test 28% THC. What's going on?
That's a really good question. I wish I did know the answer.
I'm writing an article about it, about the dimension of ripeness, and I'm looking for the science behind how do you have cannabinoid form but no resin.
Yeah, one of the things that I've always explained to people is that the best or the most resin is produced the last couple weeks of flowering with most varieties. Yes. I mean, that's when it just, what I call, frosts out. First the plant grows vegetative, then it flowers, and then the last couple weeks it frosts out. And that's when you want it. I like it totally frosted out. Rob Clark likes it a bit younger because he says it's got higher terpene and taste and it's more irie instead of stony. But I like it maxed out myself.
That's because you like it stony, Sam. What about?
I like it stony, but with the right variety, so it's irie stony.
What about Chris's jacket? He likes it stony. I want to trip balls with Chris.
Seriously, he looks like he would have.
Yeah, you absolutely do. I figured it was like, you know, hash church, and someone needed to wear some good ceremonial garb for the day. Make
Hell
it look,
yeah, dude.
keep it happy.
Respect.
This thing's actually awesome. I got this in the Haight Ashbury. It's like totally, like completely like embroidered and handmade, and it's banging. I just want to feel majestic.
I'm pretty sure that I saw Wino about 20 years ago wearing that coat, and somebody gave him acid and he made that coat.
That sounds about right. I wanted to actually speak. I got a chance about the water-soluble like preserving water-soluble terpenes and by not even using water at all. So like one of the things we've been doing recently is the liquid nitrogen hash for the what we call extra virgin line. And basically what we'll do is we can take dried plant material, or we can take like super fresh. Ideally, we'll take super fresh material, plunge it right into liquid nitrogen, and then utilize any sort of bags to break them down. We found that the full mesh bags are the most efficient, and what's nice is that the nylon and the material that we use in them doesn't get brittle, unlike the solid materials that they use sometimes to make the bags. And so we'll find that they work pretty well. You can plunge them into, make like a big reservoir of liquid nitrogen and do the work right in there. Obviously ventilated.
Have you used polyester or just nylon?
Pretty sure they're just nylon at this point. Polyester would probably work too. And then what we'll do is, the various ways of drying it obviously include, just sort of air drying or desiccant drying or freeze drying. So obviously that's up to the person, but we've been playing around mostly with desiccant drying and just removing the oxygen from desiccators and keeping them dry, and then we'll let that resin cure. Yeah, well, because you're not like actively pulling, the desiccator itself would be like closed, so essentially they've got nowhere to go. The desiccants mostly absorb the water, and so we find that it's a pretty good method of preservation. I mean, when you look at the freeze dryer waters that everyone comes off, I mean, it's like they're full of stuff that is not water, quite clearly. And so we'll take that resin and we'll cure it up to a certain point, get the water content out, and we go right to the rosin from there. And I don't know, so far we've had pretty good results, and we've had some high sugaring, really like syrupy sort of concentrates that come out of it, as well as butters, and only consistency we really haven't had is any shatter come out of it.
Do you recycle the liquid nitrogen, or do you evaporate it off in the room so you can actually smell if it's high in terpene?
We don't evaporate. I mean, like, it evaporates naturally. I mean, ideally you'd have like a jacketed vessel or something like that, just because obviously you'll decrease the amount of evaporation. But you burn through a good amount of liquid nitrogen, unless you have like really high quality like systems. But you keep them as much as you can. If you do multiple batches, you have extra liquid nitrogen here or there, and you may just add it. And that's what's really cool about it, is the surface tension of the liquid nitrogen is so low that the speed at which you filter through all the bags, including even the 25U, is so quick that it's like gangbusters. You can there's none of that like heavy bag thing where it slowly drips down. It's just rips right through. It's pretty gangbusters, and so I know it's been pretty fun working with it. So then, what you guys were talking about going after that super fresh, it's exactly, that's the game. It's like, liquid nitrogen in bags in a pot is pretty straightforward. You learn the technique, you learn how to break up the buds. You can ideally not freeze them. I mean, in the sense of like flash freezing and how they like preserve like tuna on big ships and get them out for like sushi grade, is it's frozen so quickly. In this case, just liquid nitrogen, it in fact changes the cell structure and everything compared to conventional freezing. When you freeze something, when you freeze something like, just in the regular freezer, it takes longer. The water has time to disrupt the cell walls and stuff like that. With liquid nitrogen, you get a much different effect, and so you're chasing that freshest, most like pure experience of the plant, because by plunging that into liquid nitrogen, you're dropping that thing down to like, negative.
Minus 198. 198.
Thank you. I was gonna say it's about 200, but yeah, so negative 198, like Mark said.
One of the things that I've always wondered is, do we want to chase the terpene profile at harvest, or is the reduced terpene profile after you get from a 2-week dry and a 3-month cure? Is that terpene profile superior? I think it is.
Well, I think it depends strain to strain. I think like sativas, because they're going to have big different cushes, I'll say like definitely a lot of these things have benefit from some cure time, and we find that either the curing of the resin or the curing of the rosin. In fact, we get huge. I definitely feel like the curing of the final rosin makes a difference. We had some OGs we ran last week, made a bunch of it, came out, just did not taste right. Didn't have that cushy gas taste, and a week later, or 4 days later or so, we went back and dabbed it, and it had buttered up. It had sort of like aged and cured up, and the flavor on it had changed to the point where it was now that like distinctive kush. So it was. I think there's an art involved to sort of the curing and all these processes, whether you're doing water hash or whether you're doing nitrogen.
I think some of the more volatile monoterpenes are in large amounts actually harmful for when you're.
They hurt the throat. There's no denying
laryngitis.
Yeah, and we've seen it every year at the Cannabis Cup, and it was the last year in Amsterdam when I had the dry sift that was cured for months. It was a sweet skunk dry sift, and when you hit it, you know, I talked to Rob about this at that cup. We might have even had a conversation about it in regards to, it's almost as though these caustic monoterpenes that are like, they're just right there to evaporate. They're the ones that need to clear out. That once they leave, it's like a blanket that's taken off the next more subtle profile that's below that now can escape, and it changes the experience. And I'll tell you, I didn't want to smoke anything but that hash because it was so smooth. Each time I took a hit of it, it was like I took a sip of a smoothie, and the odd time I took a hit of hash that someone offered me, oh, smokes, it was like razor blades in comparison.
It's like 20-year-old Scotch versus rock gut Scotch.
I'm telling you.
And I think that's why some of these butters and stuff are cool.
At the same time,
the whipping process.
I think I respect, and you know, from Frenchies coming in, it's not about one way over another, my way or your way or his way. It's about all of the ways. Having access to all of the ways, being able to cure some out longer and cure some out less. If this is what you feel you want, if this is what you like, if this is what you...
And I guarantee that if I like it, I'll smoke it, whether it was cured 1 hour or 3-4 months.
Agreed.
You know?
Yeah.
If I like it.
Well, that's the art of it. Making the good hash and bringing it to people and knowing each strain. I think that's the fun thing. It's like you were saying, the sleeve stack breaks off and this one's better cured, or this one's better fresh, or this one makes better terps, or this is the fun. I mean, that's what brings us all out, is to have fun with the different strains and the different techs and put it all together to keep everyone enjoying it. So.
Yeah, well, I'm down with that. It's great. It's the spice of life. Variety is the spice of life. And we need to have variety out there.
Whatever happened to that? Is that seed company still around? What seed company was that?
That was Breeder Steve.
That had that saying.
That was Breeder Steve. We had the Spice of Life seed company.
Yes, that was. Yes.
It was him with a big beard.
That was cool.
His hand out with some seeds in it. That was his logo. Shout out to Breeder Steve.
So I had a question for Sam. As far as curing the resin, do you think that curing the resin on the plant or curing it off the plant makes a large difference?
My favorite way to do it, because I found it easier, is to first dry the plant for 2 weeks in the dark, hanging upside down, then box it, whole branches, it just very lightly put in the box, just completely fill the boxes and keep the room at a moderate temperature and a humidity that's not too high or too low. And what it does is it really changes it. It mellows, it cures. It's just like what happens with wine, with cheese, with meat, with everything, or not with everything, but a lot of things are better after they've been cured. And
is it the microbial kind of breakdown that does the curing?
That's one thing. No, I don't think so. I think curing is different than being broken down. I think it's a change of starches to sugars, and
that's all microbially assisted, Sam. Okay. Microbes play a role in that.
I'm not a chemist. I'm not an expert. I'm just really experienced. And
you're using cardboard.
It changes too because it's no longer meany greeny at all. It's it's like sugar. I mean but I'm talking about herb here, not resin. And I prefer drying it on the plant because a lot of resins dry sift, when you have them in large quantities, they're hygroscopic. They absorb water and it causes them to go off. So I don't like drying large amounts of dry sift all stacked on top of each other. I've seen it cause problems with the material going whitey and all kinds of things. Whereas if I store it in a freezer, it's absolutely perfect at -30. So I prefer doing all the prep and curing and all that kind of stuff before I separate it. And then once I've got it separated, get it to the purity level you want, whether it's 50% resin heads or 99.9% resin heads, and then stick it in an airtight container and freeze it.
Cool. Well, thanks for sharing, Sam.
Hey, Marcus, can I go back to
question for the panel? What came first, sativa or indica? We're arguing over it. Sorry to just break it. But what came first, the chicken or the egg, huh? The sativa or the indica? Go.
Definitely the mushroom.
Weren't they all together on Gondwana land in the first place?
I would guess the sativa.
Right? This is serious science, guys. Like girls, I need serious answer.
I'm being serious. I think it was sativa. And by sativa, I mean non-drug variety. Hemp.
How dare you?
No, that's impossible because there is scientific study proving that plant is genetically engineered to produce as much cannabinoid as possible. So anything that doesn't produce a maximum of cannabinoid, that's a hemp. That's a plant that has been breeded since the beginning of time not to produce cannabinoid, but
the exact opposite is true. That man has selected for high THC varieties. Man has selected for high fiber content. Man has selected for varieties that can perform in particular photoperiods.
So hear you say, Sam, that she was born just making us clothes and paper and rope and these like useful things that we would go on to evolve as humans with. But
as long as you're happy with
shit.
If you were happy with 1 or 2% smoking ganja, yes. If you wanted it any better, you wanted it after the hand of man.
Didn't Carl Sagan state that man has evolved with this plant for thousands of years to have the receptors where we have throughout our bodies for them in the abdomen and the brain? So wouldn't that also lend some credence that there was THC from the beginning as well?
No, because it's not a receptor for THC. It's a receptor for anandamide, for the endocannabinoid system. THC just happens to make a key that fits in the same door and lock.
It's a mimic, structural mimic of anandamide.
No, it's not true.
The industrial side of Mary Jane. I mean, all power for her. You know what I mean? But you just think that we selected the good ones through our experience. That she had minimal amounts of psychoactive THC, and we just kept picking the ones that were the most appealing to us.
Well, here's what you can do. You take your 20% THC varieties. Let's say a whole bunch of them, 100 different ones. Plant them someplace where they can reproduce on their own. Let them free pollinate. Come back in 20 years and check the THC levels. They're way, way, way down. Without the hand of man to support them, they don't stay high.
But didn't they come from the mountains?
The mountains meaning what?
The Kush region?
Some of them, yes, but not ganja varieties. Ganja varieties came from the tropics.
Interesting.
Well, you know, I have really strong opinions on this because I've been studying evolution along with Rob Clark for, you know, really a long time. But
I don't believe that you have a strong opinion.
You're just saying shits, man.
Oh, fuck. Sitting in the 90 micron bag.
Got another good one here. You know, so our first connection to cannabis, Frenchy feels, has to been the resin, because you touch it, it sticks to you, it's fragrant, it's appealing. So what do y'all think of that?
You have millions of years of evolution. Like, humanity moved from South Africa to the European continent somewhere around 3 million years ago. 2 million years ago, there is evidence of humanity from Europe to Papua New Guinea. That means that 2 million years ago, humanity with a huge baggage of knowledge in his back could have made that plant for the first time as far away as 2 million years ago, when they were on a continent. Even if you give them another million years to really find and connect with that plant, that's a million years ago, that before we actually domesticated fire.
Well, man has been collecting stuff like this for as long as you say. But man has only been a farmer where he cultivated crops for less than 20,000 years, for sure. Some people say it's less than 15,000.
13,000 BC.
I'm
not talking about hashish. I'm talking about charas. I'm talking about the simplest way to collect resin from that plant. It's to put it on your hand. It sticks naturally. That's
Frenchy, don't you think that primitive man was first attracted to the seeds for nutrition and then found out that when he was collecting the seeds, his finger got covered with the resin that was psychoactive? I strongly suspect so.
Food.
But as another way of looking at it, it really just depends on how, is if they touched it first or if they smelled it first. Because if they smelled it first, are we calling resin part of, is terpene part of resin, or is terpene a completely opposite?
I would add this about that, in the sense that you do not need, the first time we ever grew a hemp field in Manitoba, and we walked into the 5 acres and it was, budding, and it had resin all over it, and it stunk to high heaven, we were like, whoa, like, this just smells and looks like bud. It had 0.01% THC. It was the Zolotonosha from the Ukraine, which was like, I think, some of the lowest THC hemp that they had ever tested anywhere on the planet. And it still had terpenes. It definitely still had a fragrant odor and smell that in a 5-acre plot you could smell from quite a distance away.
Yeah, I got to have a picnic in Ben Gronker's hemp field in September 96, and it's a very fragrant experience. It was absolutely beautiful. I think there will be, the equivalent of near beer for cannabis, because it's such a pleasant smoke, and it was just so appealing.
And imagine, this is the time of the mega flora and the mega fauna. Everything was 3 to 5 times bigger than anything we know today. Possibly the plant's the same.
So they could just pick the resin off like grapes and eat little balls.
That sounds good.
Read me that, please.
Perfect for dab size.
Hey, how about we all take a dab right now? I'd love everyone to be smoking something in the next minute. We haven't had a good, real nice hash church rip all together in a while. And right before we do, we'll have D420K chime in with his classic.
Bong rip! Bong rip, mother lovers.
You could also ask everybody in chat to say where it is that they're viewing us from.
We could. You just did. So answer Skunkman Sam. Tell us where you're viewing us from while we all smoke a giant dab of something beautiful. Something 90 micron, obviously. We got to hit some 90 micron here. Come on.
And a terp dip.
Well, yeah, that's
I don't have any 90.
Well, that's okay. Hit some full spectrum.
Oh, Frenchy, you'll just have to smoke that crap you have.
Smoke them if you got them.
Oh, yes.
Hash Church 90. Thank you, everyone, for showing up. And check out the Schlop Cup. That's pretty sick.
And Frenchy, do you have a favorite hash variety that you've made yourself? What is it?
what I made to truly, it's what I made in India, in a mountain, in Malana and the Parvati Valley.
Parvati.
When you stick resin on your hand, it's really a communion with a plant that I'd never had, because before that I made hashish. You don't go during the season, you go in the winter, you sieve. So it's like I never had really a strong relation with the plant. In India, 10,000 feet in the wilderness of Himalaya, that was the most incredible.
I've been there, Frenchy. I know exactly where you're talking about. I'm wondering if you made dry sift or water hash from those same plants. What do you think the difference would have been?
I've never done, because you don't have the climatic condition to do that there. It's so humid. You can hardly dry the flower.
No, you can make water hash even in extremely humid areas. We had no problem in Jamaica.
Oh yeah, no, but I mean, I was living in a cave at 10,000 feet, so a little difficult
Just an air conditioner, Frenchy.
I'd have made some hash. I'm not gonna lie.
Hey, check it out, everybody. Who else has these? Andy Hammer's fucking old school. It's about to be Frenchy's new favorite pipe, I think.
Me, it's one of my favorite.
Pipe on Hash Church.
This is a 2010 Maui Waui and HP13 made by Minjin from Aficionado House. He's the only one I know who has. Oh, did you smoke it?
No.
Those little hash hammers, Todd, are the best.
I told him that Alan Dronkers likes old hash, and he pulls out this, I have a piece from 2010 story, and then gives me some. So
this piece is 9 years old. This piece of bubble hash is 9 years old now.
A tad bit of oxidization happening there, eh?
Yeah, it's self-pressed.
Oh, but it still tastes absolutely fantastic. I wrote about that that hash, that Mean Gene hash, and it was like butter, and it melted like water.
This stuff, which I've cured this stuff 3 different ways for the last 9 years. I have some in glass, I have some that's open and exposed, and then I had some that I was more preserving in cold. And this particular piece smells and tastes like the most incredible perfume flavored, like just it's almost shocking when it first hits your lips the first time I smoked it, and it happened between year 5 and 6. It just changed completely, and it was, at first I was like, man, did I like contaminate this? Did I like spill something on this? Is this, because this just can't be. D420K's hit this before. It's like super trippy hash.
Must be stable as hell.
It's super stable, dude.
Yes. Even after I exhaled it through my nose, and it still gave me the peppery, that fizz like a Coca-Cola burp out of your nose. It was so
this was blonde dry sift, but you can see this has been sitting out on a shelf for 2 or 3 years, and it just turns red.
That'll do it. That'll do it.
Now, Todd, you were talking about how Dronkers likes the aged hash. He actually slow carboxylates it, right, over a long period of time in an oven to do that?
No, you know what was... Sorry. Enjoying French hats. No, you know what it was? Alan lives in tropical places, and he managed to lose a big chunk of hash in his couch in a very warm environment, and didn't find it for like 7 or 8 months. And when he found it, he felt like it was stronger than when he lost it, but he thought he was a little crazy. But now science shows us that you can low temp decarboxylate over a longer period of time. So in effect, what I think he did is he just put the hash in a warm place by letting it sit delta 9, and it wasn't his imagination. It was because all of your decarb is happening right here in the heat, and if you don't decarboxylate it all when you light it slowly, if you inhale too quickly or whatever, you just destroy a lot of the THC and you don't actually enjoy it. And we just lit this using this really cool ceramic ember touch lighter. It's fucking awesome, and I highly recommend it because you know, you don't want to inhale this. You know, people talk shit about BHO, but really the trail of butane coming off of this fucking lighter is obnoxious, and most people inhale it and they suck it right into their pipe. And it's the worst way to light it. I mean, if you really want to have a really good hit of hash and you don't have one of these, get a magnifying glass and go in the sunshine, wear sunglasses, and light it using the sunlight, and you will taste a hashish you have never tasted before.
Taste the rainbow!
Because you're also getting the carbon off of those bits. So that's also the big problem with those big lighters. Hold them up and put your lighter directly on a side of a candle and watch the soot that happens, if anybody is wondering, and you can see it happen.
Suck it on the tame.
You were muted, Todd.
I was going to say that Rod Clark taught me when I first met him in Amsterdam, we'd sit in the greenhouse smoking hash, the art of lighting a hash pipe. Because really, it shouldn't be lit, it should be heated. You should just use that flame to warm the bowl so that you basically vaporize the hashish and you can taste the full body of it. If you have sucked the flame into the pipe, you have failed. It was basically the lesson.
No, I think it's you got to use a Zippo and you got to overfill it so while you're using it, it's dripping the fuel into your bowl. That's some high school shit right there. How about that?
Have you guys seen those new plasma lighters that they have? It's like two purple lightsabers going end to end. I wonder what kind of flavor that's giving off.
Man, I'll tell you, no matter what it is, it changes the profile. The more that I learn to hit off of quartz versus titanium versus ceramic versus silicon carbide versus sapphire versus whatever, there's so many different surfaces that as they all retain and release heat differently, they also release the flavor profile differently of a terpene profile. It's pretty incredible.
It's been fascinating to be trying different nails over the years and to see the different effects and feel the different effects even off the same cannabis, because I can get a different effect off of a titanium nail than I can off the silicon carbide versus a sapphire versus a quartz.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's there's subtle differences, but the differences are vast. And when you're getting as obsessive as we are into trying to preserve or trying to wash, you know, like Chris with liquid nitrogen, if you're trying to preserve all of those terpenes, you might even want to make sure that you find the method or that gives you the most flavor profile from what you've preserved in the first place. Because if you just go throw it on a badly seasoned titanium nail at 900 degrees, you may be losing some of the subtle nuances that you were trying to preserve in the first place.
And I did see somebody actually makes bowls now with magnifying glasses on the top of them, so they're all set, so all you have to do is just go right outside and just hit some sun.
I would say when Todd said wear shades, I would step that shit up to wear welder's goggles or glass blower shades, because honestly, like, from someone who used to be really into solar bowling, that shit will blind you. Try not to stare at the little dot of sun. Like, stare just over to the side of it so you're using your peripheral vision.
And be careful where you are pointing the magnifying glass. I've seen friends burn their girlfriend's legs accidentally and burn their own legs and not paying attention after they did their bong hit where the sun was going through the magnifying glass, and it's an instant super burn.
I'll tell you. To talk about super burns for just a quick second, and when you said burn the leg, when my friend brought the cherry oil from the Kootenays to Vancouver, and he was making this cherry oil back in the 90s, before bubble bags and all these other things, we were not smart how we were inhaling it. Our friends were like, yeah, we'll make this thing called the mare, which was like this crazy spoon bent over a torch, and so you'd heat this spoon up and it would get way too hot. And putting a dab of oil, a huge dab of oil on this hot spoon, so hot that the oil literally just danced right off of the spoon onto this girl's leg, and oh my God, it was like a 1/4 gram of boiling oil that splashed down on her leg. It was probably the size of like a silver dollar for you Americans, or a toonie for you Canadians. Ooh, I'll tell you. That was the, I changed the way I did things after that day, just looking at that happening and thinking, man, like, cannabis is not supposed to hurt people.
Yeah, the hash burns are the freaking worse because, yeah, it's scalding.
Come on, I remember when we used to have holes in our shirts from seeds. Am I the only one? Am I that old?
Not from seeds.
Seeds would pop in joints in the 70s. Back in the day, kids.
Man, you in Europe, you want to know if somebody smokes, you look at his clothes. You cannot put something without having a little oil coming in the first few hours.
Yeah, that crazy hash, it goes to show you the level of contamination that was occurring because those little like balls of whatever, they would just come red hot and then fall in and everything, like flaming
Well,
little.
That used to be true, Frenchy, for sure. I dropped little red hot hash coals on half of my clothing until I started smoking hash that bubbles and melts.
Exactly.
It makes stain on your clothing, but it doesn't burn holes because there's no cherry.
I'm talking about people mixing it with cigarette. Huh? I spliff.
I've never met anybody who does that.
Oh yeah. Nice meeting you, Sam.
Oh my God, that's funny. Yeah, for me it was always hash. It was always hash burners, we called them. You know, it was like definitely not a good idea to roll up a big hash spliff and then like drive, because you'd be doing this. Oh shit! Almost getting into a.
And I guarantee you, Frenchy, when I used to roll Thai weed and Afghani joints, I dropped cherries on myself 1,000,000 times.
Remember seeds in our weed, though? That is a long time ago.
There's
a whole generation of kids that don't even know that.
Albums. You had to have records. That you broke the bud up on and then got the seeds separated.
That's all.
We're the best.
I was right at the end of that. Thank you, Dad, for passing me on your albums. Old Led Zeppelin and Sabbath albums.
Dude, Houses of the Holy, when you'd open it up and roll your joints with the fucking going up the fucking thing. I loved it. Oh, the world.
I forget which album it was. I think it was Jackson Airplane. They built a rolling box into the album cover that you could fold up, and it was a little rolling box for separating seeds.
I don't miss separating seeds from my weed. I really, really, really don't.
Yeah, I don't miss that at all. And worse yet is what Todd was talking about. I never saw the seeds really dropping and burning people, but what I saw was I smelled the seeds. And until I even was in a room where people were smoking DMT, I never really associated it with that. But I'll tell you, it's definitely like the smell of burning seeds reminds me of people smoking synthetic DMT.
You know
it's the smell of burning essential fatty acids.
You know that smell. It's that worst smell. It's that, oh, who did it?
It's like, oh, you made rosin with seeded bud? Mm.
But you've got to be thankful for seeded buds in one reason. Without it, how could a cannabis ever, the way the seeds got to America was inside of smuggled cannabis.
Right.
At first. And that's what everybody grew.
Well, good on them. Good on all you people that felt the need to practice civil disobedience and smuggle cannabis concentrates, seeds, all over the world. We are the carriers. We have definitely brought this plant to all four corners of the earth if it wasn't already there.
Actually, it started so long ago that we cannot trace the birthplace of the plant.
Yeah, or ourselves for that matter.
No, we know where we started, but we don't know where that plant was born. It's or Central Asia or the feet of the Himalaya.
Or it goes as far back as Pangea.
Yeah, that's as far as they traced it. And
or perhaps the Anunnaki brought it from Nibiru. Who's to say?
No, but it's interesting because there is no other plant like that.
Only one person smiled at my statement. Sheila's like, what the fuck is Bubbleman?
I used to discuss this with Rob Clark, and he felt this was like 30 years ago, that there was no proof that cannabis was around 15,000 years ago. Now, he doesn't think that anymore, but he was just being a cold clinical scientist and saying there is no proof, which technically he was right.
Right. Time for a little bong rip. Hash Church 90 micron. 895 people watching around the world right now. Hope you guys are getting something out of this conversation. Hemp seed oil for president. I agree with that, Guild Extracts. Cannabis would make a great president.
So ask everybody out there who are American voters, if Trump really is serious about legalizing marijuana in all 50 states, would you vote for him?
Oh, shouldn't we first ask how many people actually believe voting has anything to do with the actual outcome of an election? Because that would be an interesting first question.
Sam, Trump is like that guy trying to get laid on a Friday night. He's going to say anything to get in her pants. Unfortunately, he's just trying to fuck us, the American people.
He's got me, man. I'm going to vote for him if he's going to legalize marijuana in all 50 states. Hillary sucks, or maybe that's why I don't like her, because she doesn't.
Because she doesn't. There you go. Well, I don't know about elections and voting and whatnot, but fuck those guys. I don't think they even make hash. Wow, people sure hate. People are very passionate about this politics thing, this election thing. It's pretty incredible to see. You can get people enraged. You got the chat going, Sam.
Didn't Mark Twain say
that was not my intention?
If voting matters, it would be made illegal?
Yes, exactly.
To be honest, I doubt that I could ever vote for Trump or Hillary. Hillary's just, she's a day late and a dollar short.
She has the dollars.
Let's talk hash, guys.
Right.
Let's talk hash. I have one question for you. That paper that talk about that monoterpene that is so rare that they want to call it hashishin, that you find in every hash piece. Have you any of you read the actual scientific research?
I read the paper.
It's like, for me, I always knew that pressing brought a lot to the game. Outside decarboxylation, that I really thought that I was locking down my terpene inside the mass of resin. But to realize that I'm creating 50 plus compounds that are an elevation from the original that you can find in a dry and live plant, and creating monoterpenes that are so rare that they don't even have a name.
Well, they do have a name now.
Change literally the dimension of pressing for me. It's like, it's actually a scientific proof that traditional pressing has really something behind to show beyond aging.
Well, it shows it changes, but until you smoke hashishin with THC, you don't know whether it's something that you like or it's something you don't like.
There is always THC in hashish, huh? I mean, the one I smoke.
Yeah, yes, but what I'm saying is that if you smoke hashishin with THC, does it improve the effects, or does it make effects that you don't like? Maybe it's like CBN, it's really old and cloudy, and that's clear.
We don't know, but it's part of most every hashish. Personally, I prefer
that's not true. They just found it in the hashish that had been seized by the police and was old. It's not in every hashish. That hasn't been proven.
Yeah, that's what Chimera was saying, that we haven't really found it in many places at all right now.
It could be there.
You in? Trying to get in.
Yes, it could be there in every single hash, even if it's not even heated and pressed. We just don't know. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, after reading the paper, my chemistry sense tells me, like Bubbleman's spidey sense, tells me that it's probably more prevalent because the question is not why is this material forming. Question really is why wouldn't it form? Because these materials, again, that most of those terpenes are metastable and will do chemistry.
I want to try it.
Didn't most traditional hash cultures leave the hash unpressed before the consumer would get it? And then it was up to the consumer to press it?
Hard to say if pressing was, how...
No, but hashish was normally kept unpressed. It was pressed when a customer told them what size they wanted, what shape they wanted, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
What saith you, Frenchy?
I
see a shaking head.
No, I don't think so. It's an old traditional way. You press before you smoke. I've never been with anybody who doesn't press hash in the producing country.
No, Frenchy, you misunderstood me. That's not what I said. I said they store the hash as a powder, and then they press it before they sell it or get involved with business or smoke it.
I think they were aging also in time. Yesterday I spent some time with one of the Brotherhood of Love, and the one who was in Afghanistan, and I finally could ask somebody who was from that group if there were a difference between the first export that they did from Afghanistan that was aged ash, then after a few years if they had felt a difference in quality. And he assured me that yes, for the beginning they had the greatest ash, and then the quality went down. They didn't really realize why, but I'm pretty sure that they bought so fast, so much that they empty the country of aged ash, and that they really felt a difference in quality when they started to buy only what was made the year before.
You got anything to say about that, Sammy? Sam's like, I went to the...
I don't know what to say except for that if that happened around 1972 or 73 when the king was forced out, then the reason was because that's when modern Afghans started, and it was not as pure, it was more adulterated, and primarily for the reasons that you're saying, Frenchy, because they wanted to meet the market demand, and they produced, and they started also using mulberry sap and various other things to make it look like it was, when it was pressed, that it was high quality with a shine, but it wasn't. It was just, inferior hash made to look like good hash.
Mm. Yeah, I saw that in Switzerland. I saw a guy was taking his sort of shitty hash. He'd press it into these big, like, kilo blocks, pretty thick blocks. He put a little kind of leaf that was lifted up, made into the hash, almost like a mold. But then he'd take his good hash, like his melty hash, and he would melt it over the top of this hash and, like, make it so it looked like the piece was just unbelievable quality. I was like, man, that seems a little bit deceiving. That's why I've always preferred my hash to be unpressed before I get it. I like to press it. I like to smoke it in a nice pressed piece. I also like to smoke it in powder. But I do like to be able to get resin.
What variety was that, Marcus? Was it a variety called Bait and Switch?
The Bait and Switch, yeah. That was from Owl Productions in Switzerland, down in Lugano, and that was the Bait and Switch. That was the hey, this is the real gum, and then you go to buy like a big piece, and it's breadfruit resin. It's like, oh, wonderful.
Hey, Mark, let me just be honest about like that situation about pressing. So, Frenchie told me some stories about doing the same thing, how people modified the hash and pre-pressed it and definitely made it look better. But just to betray how new I am to this, less than 2 years, when I made some jagu last year for the farmers and I had it unpressed and I made some that was pressed, we smoked some, let's say, within the last 2, 3 months. And it was way better, the pressed variety. And it was kept in the same conditions. So, whereas you're bringing up the point that perhaps you don't have a whole bunch of proof that pressing has been done traditionally, just like you say, we're progressing. And at this time, from an experiential standpoint, I see that it tastes better and it keeps better. Even in a cold environment, the hash just gets better. That's why Mean Gene's hash is so much nicer years later, even though, as he said, he made it in conditions that were not ideal. He didn't keep it in the ideal conditions, and it wasn't the best material to begin with.
Well, I'm not saying don't press by any means. I'm saying when I get hash, I like for it to be unpressed because unfortunately pressing may very well be a root of tradition. Who really grabbed a hold of pressing are smugglers. They love pressing because you can first you can adulterate the hashish without people really knowing, and then you can of course smuggle the hashish because powder is much bigger and harder to move than tiny little pressed pieces. So unfortunately that sort of group of people have been prevalent in the pressing and the moving of the hash. I'm in Canada, so we see a lot of hash come in via Montreal. Please mute your mic if you don't mind, Tony. Holy shit. We just see a lot of different we get hash that comes into Montreal, and then these guys take it and they break it down, and then they adulterate it with like an enormous amount of cut, like 50+%. So I'm not saying don't press. I'm just saying when I get my hash, I like for it to be unpressed, and then I can do with it as I please if I want to press it up and cure it for some years. I just like to be able to see the resin, particularly under my macroscopic lens. I love to be able to look really close up at the resin and see what I'm about to consume.
Well,
options.
To tell you the truth, imported hashish is almost impossible to get as just a powdered resin. It's easy to get pressed.
For sure. Yep. Unless you go right there to the place where it's being made before they're pressing it, which we've seen as well. Welcome, Tony. That was quite the bong rip.
Sorry about that. I thought I hit mute as soon as I came in. I did not mean to disrespect the room.
No, that's all. I've been muting people. Todd and Frenchy have a really bad echo going on, so I've been pretty much on muting that mic the entire thing. But I was really more upset with myself because I missed muting your mic, because it is really my job to mute the mics. I know that. And when I didn't, I was like, "Fuck! I'm gonna lose my train of thought." And I didn't mean to call you out like that. But thanks for wearing the 90 micron shirt. Respect.
I'm not gonna lie, it was kind of awesome.
You were laughing, dude. I saw you loving it.
Bro, I just saw him come in and he just started dying, and I had to start laughing. It was pretty awesome. I wish I started church like that.
Dude, one time, and I don't know which hash church it was, but one time Tony was like, "Let's all do a dab," and we all did this monster dab, and literally the entire panel was coughing and pouring out of their eyes, and like literally just kind of doing what he did when he just came in there. I liked it.
At least you didn't drool dip.
Yeah, absolutely.
How dare you?
How dare your mic sounds fine now, Todd. What the heck?
We switched it, and we noise, and Etienne was nice enough to complain off screen.
Oh, nice. Etienne, you are a good complainer. He's like, I know how to do it.
Hey, I want to say thank you for everybody joining us today. We started doing Hash Church just having fun, and it's, I think, turned into an educational tool for a lot of people. I get so much good feedback, and just everybody coming in like this and sharing their experience. when I first got into cannabis activism, really that's what was so exciting. Everybody was kind of getting together for the first time and sharing their experience, although we were doing it on college lawns and, you know, various venues we could find along the way. But this is neat, and I just want to thank everybody for showing up today. It's cool.
Absolutely.
Especially
what is the variety of hash that you made in America that you liked the best? And why did you like it the best? And how was it made? Water, dry sip?
Here I mostly do water. I don't think I lose anything in water. And for me, it's hard to say what I prefer because my youth I had only 6 flavor. Morocco, Lebanon, Paki, Afghani, India, Nepal. That's it. Here, every strain is like stepping in a new producing country. So
there must be one that just rings your bell.
What's that, Sam?
I'm not sure who was supposed to be talking, but I was just
talking, and then you cut him off. But what did you say?
I apologize. And
that's okay.
I'm just wondering, is there one variety that just really stands out and rang your bell, and you'd really like to have lots more of that?
I'm good. Some subcool. It's got to be a subcool strain. Let's listen to it.
No. Actually, it's aficionado. It's called Pinot Noir.
Oh, Pinot Noir.
The first time that I made a hash that tastes like chocolate. It's amazing. And it's not been released yet. And when it's going to be released, I will be the only one to have access to it, and it will be available only as hashish.
And do you like it better, the taste and the effects, both?
Both. It's a blackberry kush and a Paki 78. Both grown in Mendocino by the same people on the same place for 2 generations, and she's amazing. It's like she packs a punch, but it's light, it's comfy.
Frenchy, that was my first article. The very first article I did for Weed World was on that Pinot Noir. And she's, I mean, super sweet, easy, slides in super nice. And for that being my introduction to hash, it was just amazing. Amazing. I would have that over and over.
Why is it named Pinot Noir? Does it taste like it, or does it have a hue of?
No, I wouldn't say it has a hue of Pinot Noir. You'd have to ask Frenchy to talk about the history of that. But I wouldn't say it has a wine-like flavor at all.
The flower was very different from the hash. The flower had nothing to do actually to the hash. But the hash just tastes like an amazing chocolate. The cured resin, the live resin, was very floral with a hint of lavender to it.
I was going to say that there was one strain of terpene that I had tried that was chocolate-esque, I guess. I wonder if the genetics are similar on that. The Swiss Tsunami, Tony, do you know what the genetics were for the parents of that?
That's a sour Tsunami.
The Swiss. Oh, okay. I have one labeled Swiss.
Yeah, and then there's a CBD Swiss Gold.
Okay.
So it's Swiss Gold by Sour Tsunami, I believe.
Okay.
Exact.
Yeah, I found that one had a sort of a chocolatey taste after I dipped in it a little while.
Well, I'm trying to get 90 dabs in this hour, guys, so I apologize if I keep up with this pace. I'm about 9 in, so I only have about 81 left to go.
That sounds reasonable.
Yeah, it sounds like a good day.
Smoke 90 grams or take 90 hits. You know, I don't think I could smoke 90 grams right now.
Oh, you could do it, dude. All right, so who else is going to join the 90 dab challenge for Hash Church?
I'll give her a try.
I know Chris is down for sure.
I have to be at least 50 in then.
As a
Can it
woman,
only be during hash church, or can it be just today?
No, it has to be right now in the next 13 minutes. If you're gonna fucking play the game, you gotta play hard. This is hash church
mm-mm.
90. Come on.
See, this is testosterone fueled, and as a
Yeah.
woman, I don't have enough testosterone, so I'll sit it out.
Well, Dutchess, this is also I'm timing everything out. So mathematically speaking, it is possible till 1 o'clock. If I hit one every 2.5 minutes. So
Cheering you on. Woo, woo, woo.
Go team.
Yes, go team indeed. Hashish has come a far way, you know, in the last really like 20 years. It's really had a serious evolution. You know, it's done, I mean, it's come a long way in the last many hundreds, if not thousands of years, depending on what historical context you decided to believe in. Chris Bennett, I did invite him in because I love his history that he shares with us. He can always tell us how far back things went. I know that you're also a bit of an aficionado on the history, Sam.
I had a question for the group. I guess we could steer it in a direction. What was the how and what was the first way, I guess, that you tried hash, not cannabis, but actual hashish? For me, the first time I ever tried it was we used to smoke joints and stuff all the time, my friends and I, in high school. And one day, my friend he had this little wrapped up tinfoil ball. There was this little dark brown, black looking, just looked like a little piece of like mouse poo or something, you know, like just someone who'd never seen hash before. I didn't really know what it was, and I thought it was some crazy other drug or something he was trying to get me to try, and he's like, no man, it's just weed basically. So I was like, all right, I'll try it out. And we sat in his car in this parking lot of a church. Actually, we rolled up this little ball and he stuck it on the end of a thumbtack.
Oh shit.
We lit it with a torch and we were just like sucking the little stream of smoke into our mouths. And I remember just like watching him do that for the first time, and I was just like, oh my god, look at this. Like, it was just, it was so trippy the way the smoke had this like little spiral kind of going into his mouth, and I was wrecked after trying that. We shared one little ball, and I was gone.
That's awesome. I also smoked hash in a similar way. Can't really remember the exact first time I smoked hash because my whole cannabis thing, I went from like newbie to like deeply into it in like a week. You know, it was like I was buying like a joint, and then like 7 days later I was buying half pounds. Like I really got into it pretty fast. People were like, damn, that shit escalated fast with you. I'm like, that scene in Half Baked when they like smoke it for the first time and go into the store and he's like hugging the Abba Zaba bar. He's like, you my only friend. I swear my first experience smoking cannabis was similar to that. But we also smoked hash on a pin. We didn't roll it into a ball. We'd roll it into a flat little piece and then actually roll it around like a Bic pen. So it was hollow, so you could pop it off the pen, put the pin right through the hash, and then light the whole bottom, which was like, you know, the rim of a glass or whatever. You'd light the whole thing. It would turn into a cherry, and then you want to see something smoke. The smoke would come up through the middle, and we would usually do it with like a gram of hash at a time. We kind of had a little thing that we designed. It was a little glass piece that went over top of it, and then we had little hoses, 4 little hoses, and me and my buddies would smoke like a gram of hash in one shot, and that was probably only a year or two after puffing.
Mine was it was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and we took this needle and pushed it through the cardboard, and then we took a glass and put it over it. So we heated the hash, and then we put it over, and then it would smoke, and then you'd slide the glass over to the edge, and you'd just sit, you know, right off the edge of it just to get your hit. And wow, I remember that first time. It was I was completely wrecked. I was like, wow.
Yeah, that's awesome. Don't forget hot knives either, because out east.
1965, Hollywood, red Lebanese. We smoked it in a regular little pipe, and I smoked it, and I said, wow, I wish I could afford this all the time.
How much was that back then?
Oh, it was ridiculously cheap, like $50 an ounce or something.
And you were wishing you could afford it.
Marijuana at the time cost $10 for a four-finger lid, which was more than an ounce.
Wow.
No.
Yeah, but back then hash was few and far between, so that's why we treated it that way. With
Well, in Hollywood, there was no shortage of weird drugs.
Yeah, I learned that when I lived in Laurel Canyon myself. It's quite a strange place. Hey, Frenchy, you have some upcoming lectures that people could learn or know about so that they could come see you in person around the country?
I have a workshop the 25th this month in San Diego, and 2 workshops in Denver the weekend of the first weekend of July, the 1st and 2nd. And that's about it. I'm trying to organize 1 or 2 more in NorCal. But I'm trying to do the workshop in states where it's legal, so that anybody can come and do the workshop, basically.
Where will you have it in Denver?
At Adam Dunn show place. I'm not sure where it is. Downtown Denver somewhere.
You got to do better than that in the future. There, Frenchy.
I don't know. Yeah, for me, it's all the same. It's a cool place in Denver. Let's do it.
There you go.
Teaching has taken a huge part of my life. It's like I am so into. I have so much respect for tradition, and every new scientific discovery proving that there is a lot behind those traditions for me to be able to give that respect to people, to make them understand that those people invented the game and we need to learn from them before we can bring the game further. It's trippy. It's like it's sharing my life. It's sharing all those years I've been traveling. It means a lot for me now, almost as much as actually producing.
So you're teaching people your secrets, and not only that, about your travels as well.
Yeah, basically, I'm trying to combine both.
I have to say I'm really appreciative of Frenchy having been my teacher, even though I didn't, especially since I didn't know a single thing about hash. The most hash I've ever had was, like I said before, a really, really small, not even the size of a quarter. So when I saw his hash for the first time, these huge brown logs of like chocolate goodness, dabbed it. That was at 2014 San Francisco High Times in Santa Rosa. After that, I was absolutely hooked. And now, even though like my husband gets like great flowers, if it doesn't have hash mixed in it, I'm not gonna smoke the joint. And dabbing hash is the way for me. And it's Frenchy that set me on that path. And I'm really appreciative about that.
Well, I could add to some Frenchy praise, I guess. I know that he in the hash world, different people represent different things, and some people take heat for trying to set a pathway, and Frenchy's always talked about terpenes and aging and curing terpenes. And I was listening to the show earlier, and I don't know how much scientific evidence this is, but I've just been playing with terpene consistencies in 1 drops, 2 drops, 5 drops, 10 drops, what that does to the resin from the same flower. So playing with the terpene consistencies from the single source and then evaporating them out and seeing it do different things. We talk about the resin maturing. I think that underlying is the terpenes are maturing along the way too. And so they're finding their way. It's like we created chaos among all the terpenes. They're all in their little home, and then boom, we shatter it, and then they don't know what's going on. They're just all in chaos. And that curing process kind of allows them to find their territories in their way, whether they're going to push or pull different moistures in, and it makes a unique thumbprint, if you will, for the resin, how those terpenes play. So, I personally want to thank you for always making those claims and sticking to what you believe over the years. And everybody has something to offer the movement overall. So much appreciated and respect, man.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. And also it's like I actually work with breeder and grower that grow and breed terpene. Everything is terpene. Cannabinoid are terpene compound. And if something doesn't smell or taste good, doesn't matter how melty it is, you have lost it. If you lose the terpene while you collect that resin, doesn't matter the way you collect that resin, may it be like a sieving or extracting. If you lose the terpene, the game is over.
But is the game over? Because we had Irvin Rosenfield in here, medical patient. He smokes the lowest quality swag from Mississippi, but it works for him. Would we want to take that away from him because it's not the I often think maybe there's room for everything, even people that want stuff that isn't terpene rich, or because there's the connoisseurs like us who want the best quality that we can, and there's a lot of med patients that are in the same boat. But I really had my mind opened by Irv coming on and sort of saying, hey, this works for me. It works.
I've seen firsthand of a woman who only uses leaf because her eyeballs pop out of her skull because of pressure behind her eyes. And she's tried high-end bud, medium grade, low grade. All that works for her is leaf, and that causes her to relax and her eyes to relax and pop back into her skull. Okay, so very humbled by what low-quality medicine can do and the benefits it has, because it's working every day for people. I agree. I initially agree with Frenchy. I always thought only high-end stuff worked, but it was the patients who showed me all the different ranges of cannabis and what works and what is possible.
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess for me, as I get older, I just realize I want more availability, more access, and more options. I'm not as, when I first started the bags, I was just like water hash, water hash, water hash, water hash, and then I slowly got into dry sift, and then the rosin opened up, and I just think even though I myself might not be into it, I don't smoke cannabis at all, I don't try to convince people that they shouldn't smoke cannabis. I think that the variety is kind of the spice of life, and the fact that cannabis can offer us so much variety is really a testament to the power behind that plant. It's incredible. What do you got there, Chris? Pressing it out? Little waterfall tech? Looks like you're making a little bit of rosin there.
That looks squishy.
Yeah, I like the hammock. The parchment hammock. Oh yeah, open that up. Yep, there we go. Getting it all out nicely. That looks like a nice squish.
That's a nice golden color.
Now, Sam and I were talking about this the other day. Traditionally, oil and hash are different things. In my opinion, I think of oil, whether it's been made with a chemical solvent or whether it's been made like what he's doing right in front of us, I think of it as an oil, not a hash. I guess I think that mostly from Rob's book Hashish and the definitions in the book, but also just how I kind of grew up. There was always a definition, a difference between hash and oil, and I guess I just kind of would like to hear the panel's opinion on, are they different, hash and oil, or are they just the same? Is oil hashish, in your opinion, or is hashish hashish and oil oil?
Quickly, we call it hash oil, so I call it hash oil.
But that's only if it's been made from hash.
And that's what I was going to say, is that I work a lot with hash rosin as opposed to flower rosin, which would be oil. I don't work with any solvent per se as far as chemical solvents go. But I definitely notice that when I see people dabbing BHO, there is not much left on the nail. And when you have somebody dabbing even clear rosin, hash rosin, there's still something left on that nail a little bit. And, you know, maybe if you get in there at a super macro level, you may see little bits of trichome heads still stuck in that, but I feel like there's something different happening on that nail when you're dabbing BHO than when you're dabbing even hash rosin or flower rosin, because there's something left on the nail after you're smoking the rosins, which is kind of interesting, which makes me think I'm inhaling something from the BHO that I'm not inhaling from the...
Well, Rob Clark explained to me that basically all when you have a piece of BHO or shatter or some rosin, it's in flux. It's constantly moving. The lighter terpenes are coming to the top, and the heavier cannabinoids are sinking to the bottom, and you're going to get this natural separation that happens. And what you're talking about to me is just these thinner, you know, oils and alcohols that are the terpenes leaving a residue that you can't pick up with a dabber or a Q-tip or anything else. It's like once it's there, it's there. You know what I mean? And it's so micro small, you know, you can't take a pin and pick it up with the head of a pin because it's just, you know, part of the metal, part of the glass, part of the steel.
And also we are dealing with different products. When you dissolved the resin, when you use a solvent, you don't only get what is inside the resin head. You get a lot more cannabinoid from the plant matter. When you rosin, especially when you rosin hash, you just squeeze out with a little heat and a lot of pressure the resin out. So that resin is closer to what the plant had offered. When you dissolve it, you go a step away, if I may say, from what the plant offered in the first place. So when it burns, that dissolved resin, it doesn't even, it combusts straight up. The resin that has been squished out by press get longer to actually combust. There is some times in between it starts bubbling. It's closer to what the wholeness of ash is.
Just showing Chris's camera right now. He's giving us a nice little shot on this oil squish. Filling it up nicely. Not sure what he's got sitting there, but it's definitely a decent amount.
He's got a kiddie pool sitting there is what he has.
Just a little kiddie pool.
It's a kiddie pool of rosin.
It's wonderful.
That's the kind of pool I want to swim in.
Indeed. I'm glad someone's in the lab making oil and hash today. I'll tell you that much. He's got the big cable. There we go. Shit's set up. It's going off. It's good. So what do we got? Jeez, we already been doing this for a couple of hours. Holy schnaps. Talking about hash on Hash Church episode 90. 90 episodes. Kind of unbelievable. We haven't missed a single week in 90 weeks of doing this.
One of the things you were talking about, Marcus, is the difference between hash and oil, if there is a difference. So one thing is that all hash, even what they call shatter and all that, it's really, I mean, glass, when you look at, I'm talking about, you know, silicone glass, it's not really a solid. It's, if you sit it up long enough, it will slowly, over long periods of time, get thicker at the bottom than it is at the top. And these things are even much more so that. They're all, in fact, solid, but they're in motion.
Yeah, they're what a chemist would call an amorphous solid.
Ah, the old amorphous solid. Coming up, a brand new Bubbleman brand. We're gonna be rocking the amorphous solid.
Well, you know, it made more sense to me when Rob broke it down so simplistically, and you know, just the idea of these lighter molecules moving away from heavier molecules, like, you know, an alcohol mixed drink at the end of a long party sitting for too long. It made clean sense to me, and Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if the molecules finding each other is a low energy pathway, so one THC acid can crystallize and it could form a crystalline lattice, there's a certain energy that's gained from that lattice energy, and so that's when you'll start to see phase separation and things will start to sugar out because essentially nature is lazy and will take the low energy pathway.
Is it lazy or efficient?
I'm sorry, it's efficient. Yes, I shouldn't call Mother Nature lazy. Sorry. Yes, it's efficient. It's energetically or thermodynamically allowed. Let's put it that way.
She's like, I know the quickest way.
Yeah, that's right. Can we go back to ask Chris about the boiling point of THC? Because again, this is highly contested in chat rooms and on the literature, and it'd almost be interesting to ask everybody who's got an e-nail what they have their e-nail set at, and again, whether or not the e-nail is set to the right temperature to vaporize THC, I guess, is the question.
Yeah, that's the trick, you know. I can tell you from someone who uses an e-nail religiously, I have 3 of them plugged in right beside me here, that, you know, there's, and it's kind of the thing I've mentioned a few times in regards to that sublimator, Enrico Bouchard. He's got this unit called the sublimator, and although it is very big and kind of bulky and potentially mildly dangerous because it gets very hot, it gives the most incredible fucking hit. And what it gives me, the equivalent of a D-nail hit is this. It gives me the equivalent of a 480-degree, fully, like, unreal terp rip. I get all that flavor. It preserves it in that little vortex that is created. Somehow he's tapped into magic, because even puffing it through that silly plastic tube, acrylic tube with the plastic, it still tastes unbelievable. You just can't deny it. And the D-nail, what I found was I could kind of go, I could get the full smoky, like, rip, or I could get the vapory, tasty rip, or I could go in between, but the sublimator seemed to give me both. It gave me this insane, like, coughing my ass off, like I just had my D-nail set to 740 degrees, but it also tastes like I had...
What are those temperatures, Mark?
Fahrenheit?
Or centigrade, either one.
Yeah, well, I'm telling you the temperatures right now. One was 480, and one was like, you know, like 7 or 6. I don't really go over 650, 660 personally, but I find between 600 and 660 is a monster difference. You get much more of a smoky.
What was that, centigrade?
I don't know. Google it. There's a translator on Google for you. You just punch in the Fahrenheit and then go in centigrade, and it'll pop it right up. But I only use the one.
Yeah, well, again, according to Meshulam's data, which suggests, based on a nomograph, that the boiling point of THC is 424 degrees Celsius, which is about 795 Fahrenheit. The question for Chris is if when you dab nothing but the clear, so I don't want any terpenes in this experiment, I want to know, can you get a complete quantitative hit if you dab at a nail temperature below what the nomograph predicts the boiling point of THC to be based on Meshulam's data?
Well, you can answer that, Chris? You got to unmute you. There's other variables.
If I can comment for a second, yeah. Besides atmospheric pressure, when you hit on a bong, you create airflow, which alters the temperature that it'll vaporize at. When you're hitting, you can vaporize at a slightly lower temperature.
Right. Yeah, there's something to be said for that for sure, because even the temperature of THC may start at 424 or 429, whatever it was that you mentioned, but it's at the hotter temperature that it's more instantaneously inhaled, rather over this course of a minute to 2 to 3 minutes. How long does it take? Because that's the difference in what we're seeing, Mark. We're seeing the difference between getting all the hit in about 10 seconds versus getting these low temp dabs that go on for 2 to 3 minutes. Although they're tasty and they kind of give you a different headspace, they certainly do not hit the way that hotter temperature dab hits, when it just gives you the full, like, just feels like the
And when you're doing a high vacuum distillation to purify THC, you're doing fractional distillation, so the boiling point is going to change. There's no question about it. But when you're doing it in the middle of your rip and you're pulling mostly THC, that's basically going to be a very good indication. And again, whether or not it's happening on a nail surface or the distillation pot, it's thermal energy being transferred to a material, taking that material, which is an oil, which again, maybe one of the reasons why people would call it hash oil, because perhaps the oil part of that was more decarboxylated THC just because it's an oil. I'm just speculating on that. But whether it's happening on a nail surface or a distillation pot, the phenomena is the same, right? To vaporize.
But the variables are different. How much liquid is there? How much surface area per oil is available? How hot can the oil get instantaneously, or is it cooling as the bottom oil touches, but the top is still at a lower temperature? That's the difference that you get with this 6 to 700 to 4 to 500.
We've discussed this before, Marcus, but I always thought that the ultimate solution for this would be one that starts at the bottom temperature for taste and then immediately jacks up within 10 seconds or something to the higher temperature so that you actually get both.
Yeah.
Well, and
go ahead.
You have to factor.
So what's happened about decarboxylation? If you don't do your decarboxylation before smoking, that CO2 molecule is not going to let the cannabinoid go through your blood barrier. So
when you smoke, it gets decarboxylated, period.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, otherwise you wouldn't get high from it, that's for sure.
To a point, there is some decarboxylation happening, but if you look at if you look at what it takes to actually really decarb, it's quite smart to decarb a little bit your product before you're going to smoke it, because you have more cannabinoids that will be going through your blood barrier.
I'm not so sure about that. Smoking decarboxylates it completely. Do you have a comment on that, Mark?
You need 30 minutes to 1 hour when to do a decarboxylation at 180 Fahrenheit. You need 15 minutes at 300 Fahrenheit. You start transforming your THC into CBN at 320 to 360. My question is, how much decarboxylation are you making at over 450, 500?
Well, I would presume that if you decarboxylate it first and then you smoke it, then you'll be even creating more CBN and more. I mean, you're not getting more.
You'll create a different effect in the hash for sure.
But I do think that everybody should smoke prepare and smoke what they prefer the best.
Agreed.
And if that is the way you prefer it, then you should absolutely decarboxylate it first. But I've never found the need for it. When we did GC analysis, I didn't see improvement in decarboxylating materials first.
Also, one point is factor in the fact that if you have, say, 10% terpenes into this THCA or whatever, because that's basically hash, because most water hash is THCA. So what you have to factor into is the boiling point of those terpenes are much lower than that 795 point. And so what effect does that have as they evaporate and boil off within the actual resin? You know what I mean? So that might affect the boiling point of,
And the terpene also, the terpene helps the cannabinoid go through the blood barrier even with the CO2 molecule. That's even more, that's why the importance of them. But I believe that we should decarb to a certain point what we're gonna smoke to be able to maximize the passing of the cannabinoids through our blood barrier. For me, it's logical.
Like everyone should smoke that way, you mean? Are you saying that everyone should do it that way?
No, I say it like logically it makes sense to have the maximum cannabinoid go through your blood barrier when you smoke. Technically speaking, that's what we all want.
Yes.
And I believe that some decarboxylation before smoking help do that. That's all I say.
If you analyze your pressed material, Frenchy, what percent is THCA and what percent is still THC?
I have 30 to 40% THC. The rest is THCA. The same for every cannabinoid. I basically get into the 30-40%.
Yeah, so it's about a third decarboxylated.
Because at 70%, I will start transforming my THC into CBN. I don't want that.
I understand.
I usually come out with 0.25% of CBN in my hash.
Yeah, when we check fresh herb or fresh powdered hash, there's no CBN.
Hey, Sam, I don't know if you saw that discussion on, I think it was the Hash Church Facebook page, where people were asking about CBNA and whether or not CBNA was actually a cannabinoid that's typically observed.
Well, yes, it's made by degradation of THC, A, and then it goes to CBNA, and then it decarboxylizes to CBN.
Yeah, I mean, the kinetics don't speak to that. I mean, the kinetics would say that it would decarboxylate rather than convert to CBN.
Well, this is what Dr. Meshulam explained to me, and I'm not sure. You know, I'm not a chemist. You know that.
Well,
but
the only report I could find where CBNA was observed, they had to actually isolate it as its methyl ester, and it was only after extensive column chromatography that they were able to determine, because it has a very unique molecular weight.
I think I might have also asked Dr. Osole and Dr. Pertry, but I don't remember that for sure. I do remember what Meshulam had told me, but I can't swear that they're correct.
Okay.
These are tough questions, Mark. I like it.
It's about time we did something useful, right?
Well, yeah, you gotta question certain people's work. You know, there's some good argument there on the info that you're talking about, though.
Well, this was a chromatogram that I think the guys from Steep Hill had posted, and they had called a little blip CBNA, and I asked if there was a commercial standard available for that, because again, it has a very rare molecular weight. You don't find that molecular weight in any of the other cannabinoids, and I just didn't. I have never seen it in any of the testing that I've done. I just wondered if people, see that.
Well,
one
if you start with THC. And you degrade it on purpose to produce CBN, you probably got a mixture of CBNA and CBN, probably mostly CBN.
Yeah, and the thing that doesn't jive with that is the measured reaction kinetics for those reactions. So one is just much faster than the other, and so I can't reconcile that in my brain.
Yeah. And you know that much better than I do. I just know what has been reported to me.
Right. There's a really great comprehensive report that was republished about 2 or 3 years ago on the theoretical and experimental observable results for THC decarboxylation. THCA decarboxylation.
Excellent. Thank you for the clarification, Mr. Scialdone. Dr. Scialdone.
Doctor, yeah, man.
So I don't think I'm going to be able to make 90 dabs.
Dude, come on, Tony. You're at 36. Keep going.
I'm not even. I'm almost a third of the way. I don't know if I could do it.
You can do it. We believe in you.
Space it out.
I could do it today, but I don't know if I could do it in like the next hour.
You got 32 minutes.
Tony, it's all a matter of dose. It's just making micro
mini hits,
micro hits, micro.
None of us here are quitters. You're not a quitter, man. Come on now.
What you could microdose a little tiny dose every breath you take from now to the end of church.
He said every breath you take, and no one sung every breath you take. Did you sing it in your head?
I think it's time for it. I mean, we got to do the bong rip.
All right. Well,
I don't have anything to rip.
Hey, I'm curious if anyone on the panel. I got a question.
Go for it.
Cool. I was just curious. I've been playing around in the lab, of course, like usual. Mark and myself are both chemists. I've been doing some THC acetate synthesis stuff, and curious if anyone on the panel had ever tried or experienced the THC acetate themselves firsthand.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
What's it look like?
Like white.
What's it look like? Can you hold it up? Let's see.
By TLC, it's one. By TLC, it's one spot. It's
Right.
a nice. It's fairly thin. I was surprised at how thin the product was. Purified by column chromatography. Started with like high purity THC distillate. And,
how did you neutralize? How'd you work up the reaction?
I worked it up with water and decomposed the acetic anhydride at a pretty high temperature for a decent amount of time, and then just standard partition and sub-funnel
Do you
extraction,
like
and
the
then
effects?
Honestly, my experience with it is very unique. It's like the dabs are extremely light tasting and have very little like sinus effect. You don't get that like expansion that you do normally with like any of their cannabinoids. You don't get an immediate like high, and then within about 15 minutes like the stoniness comes in, and it lasts for like a really long time in my experience. And me and like some lab mates who sampled the material felt pretty much the same way, in that it's pretty interesting.
The acetate is essentially acting as a prodrug, and it has a half-life in vivo. And so as that acetate gets hydrolyzed, it releases THC. So that explains the pharmacokinetics that you're observing, right?
I suspect if you ate it, it would be like insanely potent.
Mm-hmm.
It's like very, very potent.
And do you think if you did eat it, do you think you'd actually be getting high on 11-hydroxy, the breakdown, the active metabolite of THC, or would it be a different metabolite?
Well, I think we'd have to have like I think it'd be like a different combination of them. I think you'd have obviously the like Mark said, you've got the prodrug, so you'd have the metabolism and metabolizing the THC, and then you'd have the 11-hydroxy from that. But I think there'd also be potentially some other compounds. I don't know. I'm not much of a biochemist.
You're probably going to get hydrolysis of the acetate
metabolic product, but
I would imagine you'll get acetate hydrolysis in the gut.
Immediately complete.
Yeah, I don't know. Actually, under acidic conditions, acetates can actually hold up, but it's phenolic acetate, which makes it a little more reactive. So it's likely going to be hydrolyzed in the gut and then go through the same type of metabolism that it would go through if you just ate THC.
And do you like it better than if you had just pure THC?
I mixed it with some rosin, and it was quite a good experience. I got like the experience of the immediate THC and the terpenes, and then 20 minutes later was like pleasantly surprised by the slower sort of creeping, upcoming stoniness. And I would say that in large dabs, like, I've done some pretty large dabs of it, and it's like really stony.
Have you ever smoked pure THC to compare it to?
The THCA?
Yes, pure THCA.
We're talking about like acid. Yeah, I've smoked the THCA and pretty damn pure THC, and they're definitely different. I don't know if I would say better. I mean, there's like the conventional THC that you expect, and the expected length of time for the experience, and I think that varies a little bit with the acetate.
You ever dump acetic anhydride into your pot of clear and just rip it over as the acetate?
No, I worked it over. I figured just because I worked it up rather, I figured until the reaction didn't go to completion even in high, so with having to still fuck around with some of the conditions, but I did it neat. That reaction I did do neat though. and it was like I just didn't bother doing the distillation. I figured the chromatography would be easier.
Chris, hit me up offline. I can give you some catalyst that can work to make that reaction complete.
Oh yeah, well that was the thing I wasn't going to tell anyone. I will talk about it, but I do have a secret catalyst, probably along the same lines.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll chat. I don't actually have your info. I gotta find you on the internet. Where do I find?
Here,
how does one get in contact with you?
I'll give you my Gmail. Here it is.
You guys can link on #Church90. That's the way
there it
to do
is.
it right there. Link up, everybody. Share your information.
It's fun.
You're witnessing a bromance happen, folks, among the
A
industry live on
scientific laboratorial bromance at that.
No,
Chris
Chris has to promise to get one of those shirts for Mark.
Yeah, truth be told, when me and Chris first met at the High Times Cannabis Cup in Sonoma, a year or so ago, a couple of years ago?
Yeah, I think 2 or something like that.
Yeah, I mean
2 years ago.
We hit it off immediately and spoke for 6 hours after meeting each other. So.
Nothing like geeking out on organic chemistry.
You guys were so excited you forgot to switch contacts.
I had to keep on blowing Pinsky off because Pinsky kept on trying to pull me out of Chris's booth and it just didn't work.
Just wanted you to get out of the way so he could take a selfie.
Yeah, Chris's magnetism was greater than Pinsky.
Selfie.
Always a good thing.
John Mark Herring says he supports this scientific union. People are chatting away in the chat room. We got 850 plus people watching Hash Church here. Going into our 3rd hour. Hash Church actually just finished off our 3rd hour of Hash Church.
Mark, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Mark, I have a question.
Yes.
All right, so on this panel, I'm definitely the least knowledgeable of anything having to do with hash and probably cannabis. But one thing I do know is about marketing, and what I think is interesting is that every week I tune in and learn something from the educators you have on the panel. And education is a standard that is what's pushing the community. I want to know what the panel thinks that social media can bring to the table in terms of crowdsourcing education so that we can progress even faster than we progress right now. For example, rosin was, although an idea back in 2008, really didn't take hold till 2015 in February. And look at where we are right now, really through the proliferation of videos and people's images about rosin. So I just wanted to know what the panel feels about that from a marketing standpoint, not necessarily from a hash standpoint.
I kind of liken it to if you take a large plate and you take that plate and you spin it on a table. The way information was transferred 100 plus years ago is how the plate spins at the start. It kind of has this wobble to it, very slow. But as the plate approaches stopping, it gets faster and faster and faster and faster. And it seems to be a metaphor. I think Art Bell wrote a really beautiful book. Maybe it's called The Quickening. He wrote about how the vibration of life is speeding up, how information is being transferred faster than it ever has been transferred before. And I think social media is just a natural part of the evolution of that, which has been happening for a very long time, this exponential growth of information transfer. And that's why Hash Church has been so popular, I think, is because of the radical openness that we practice and how it's just about sort of putting it out there and sharing, and when people can hear these things and then they can take those things into other conversations and be a part of it through social media, not just be like watching a television, but literally be a part of it. The people who are watching right now are in chat right now talking about the very things that we're talking about, and it's incredible. I think it's much bigger than marketing, that's for sure, and I think that because we've strayed away from the sponsorships and the sort of potential dilution of the integrity of Hash Church if we were to take money from sponsors or promote things that maybe we didn't necessarily believe in, it's one of the reasons why the integrity is maintained strong, is that everyone's doing it, out of the goodness of their heart. And yeah, social media for the win, for sure.
Oh, for the most part, it definitely is organic. I wasn't coming from a marketing standpoint. I'm just saying that was my background. And so what I do for the most part is observe. I spend a lot of my day just observing. For one, it's an education as if I was in college all over again. And I just watch how friends of different ideas come and go, and I find that the education can be just so much faster if we all didn't hoard, which most people don't. People are free to give their techniques about everything, and that's just absolutely fantastic. If we all move from the standpoint that we can all teach someone else, then our educational growth will be exponential. So that's fantastic.
And you never
Thank
know.
you.
The person that you're teaching may very well outshine even, you know, the masters. So it's like you want to get that information out there because the next group of people doing it are going to better it. They're going to take it to that next level. They're going to, you know, it's like a relay race or whatever. We're just passing on the baton and then it comes back around. You're like, oh, I'll go for another round. Like, yeah, this is great. I love bettering the hashish movement. That's why I love having all of you on here today and inviting people like yourself and people like Frenchy and people like Adam and Chris and Dab Logic in the house. People that are affecting the hashish consciousness, you know, the group consciousness or the group hash consciousness of the world right now. You guys are all people that are affecting that in a more positive light. So of course you have a place on the Hash Church panel.
You know, I want to speak a little to what you said, though, because I think it's, you know, this whole challenge of trying to educate society around us has been like a puzzle to me, because we are, you know, we are trying to market our culture. We are trying to get the people around us to understand that we have, you know, a product or a concept or, you know, that they should learn about and accept. It's no different from if we were launching, you know, a new, you know, widget or Acme Coyote bomb or something. Like, people aren't going to know about it unless you tell them. And unfortunately, cannabis has suffered from misinformation, which was direct and deliberate. And we are fighting against, you know, an ignorance and a prejudice that we can only win with education and conversation. Because unless we teach people history and we teach them what cannabis was and that it came from cannabis, and that history shows us that our flags and our Bibles and all this stuff was made out of cannabis, they're not going to understand it. Just as we didn't understand it before someone came along, like Jack Herrick came along and taught me and taught a lot of us, we didn't get it until somebody like just showed us. And as we're developing companies and we're trying to market stuff, we should all go back to our roots of realizing we're educating one another about what it is we're doing. And we're sharing that, because that's building the community. That's helping one another. It's not about hoarding information or being the only guy that owns the fucking way to do something. It's really about trying to share the knowledge so that we can all benefit as earthlings. At least that's my real feeling here. And if it wasn't for people like Jack Herrick marketing a book by telling us the truth and it causing us to read this book of truth, you know, a lot of it may have been a little incorrect here and there. Jack may not have gotten it 100% right, but seldom people really do. But he gave us a real incredible path that we should all follow, which was, you know, learn the truth and spread the truth. That should be your motto.
You nailed it, Todd. I mean, it's the same thing how bubble bags, you know, were created and helped popularize water hash throughout North America and around the world. It was a marketed product, but it was a marketed product that was an educational product that gave the end user more than they put into it. It gave them back more than they put into it, whether they were putting into it monetary or they were putting their time or their energy into it or they were putting all three of those things into it. They were still getting more back in return. And for me, what I was getting out of it was that the world, my whole trip was that when I bump into people, I want them to be able to pull out a piece of hash and say, hey, want to smoke some beautiful hash? Rather than me be like, don't even pull your hash out. I'll just pull mine out right now because we both know we're going to be smoking my hash when we both show each other. And that's how it was in the beginning. Like, man, I had those bags. I was making fire hash. Most people had sift that was 20% gland heads back 15, 16, 17 years ago. Before that, before I even had access, when I first saw Sam's hash, that blew the top of my head right off. I could not believe that a hash could, it made no sense. There was no, that wasn't in the Emperor. No one was talking about that anywhere. Like, that shit was from another planet, and it really helped inspire me to get to that level where we could produce a purity where the quality is truly unveiled by allowing purity to to take its place.
Well, and even going back to the main point of just what social media did for all this, like without social media, without Mark's videos, and without Todd's culture high projects and things like that, and just even all the forums like IC Mag and all those things where we could all read and just try and learn as much as we could. Like that's the generation that I came up from. I'm not from the generation of books necessarily, as far as our main modes of information and getting the things we need to succeed, really. Like without any of that stuff, I wouldn't have personally, like I'm not a guy that goes and reads books. Like I'm not, that's just not the way that I choose to do it. I'll just try and sift through, which maybe does take longer, but I'll try and sift through all the crap that's on the internet and try and find, other, I guess, modes of finding the information. So without any of you guys, like there would be no, at least my generation, for the most part, I would say is that's how we're finding our info. So all those things really did help, and I'm very appreciative of you guys putting your necks out there in a time that it wasn't maybe so cool to do that.
I want to say thank you because, as someone who, I used to go to book shows and we used to tour with Jack and represent the Emperor, and it was so hard to get people to sit down and read this whole book. It would take months to get a response in some cases for them to have the epiphany that, wow, cannabis is not a bad thing and it's historically useful. And when I got out of prison, I swear I dreamed up the guys that made the union, because if it wasn't for Adam and what they did, it really would never have happened. But I realized we needed a film. We needed to be able to communicate this using a couple hours of a person's time instead of months to get a response, because this was an important subject and we needed a response like now, not months from now. And it's really great to hear you say that, because it took a lot of work, a lot of time to do these projects. And the reason I do Hash French now is because I have this little faint idea that it may communicate good ideas to people, and that may help them spread these good ideas into the industry around them, into the community around them, and it'll all foster growth.
Well, to be honest, we need those types of media, because there's people not from my generation necessarily that also are more, I guess, they still have a stigma about what cannabis is. Their parents were still the ones that told them, oh, this is bad, it's gonna, you're gonna kill your friends or whatever if you use this, and all this crap that's really out there. And like without those kind of videos, to just sit someone down that maybe is from earlier, like my grandparents, for instance, they wouldn't be able to deal with something like that without seeing a film that was more, it was a higher budget type of thing. It wasn't just like a cheap little indie, just and not that those aren't things that are valuable as well to the community, but it's easier to show somebody in a bigger budget, I guess, type of experiment, because that's kind of what it was, I guess.
You know what it was is we just, at the time, Brett Harvey went on to become an incredible filmmaker. He's made other films, and I've liked all of them. But the truth is putting a professional face on this has been the goal of many of us for quite a while. And it has such a deep, rich history in the cultural evolution of humanity. And people joke about marijuana and they talk down about marijuana, and they think it's just easy to be bigots about people that are dopers and whatever. But truthfully, there's probably no single plant that's played a more pivotal role in the cultural and human evolution to us on this planet than cannabis has proven to, with its many, many gifts. And for us, go.
Todd, I totally agree, and whenever I tell people why I made this move out here to California just 2 years ago, being in South Beach, which was absolutely fantastic, but definitely didn't have enough cannabis, it was partially because I had the support of my mom, even though I was in my 30s, but it was definitely good to have the support of my mom, who had seen the Sanjay Gupta special. So Sanjay Gupta, in a way, normalized for so much of mainstream America. It was like, no matter what was said by people who had been in the industry for a very long time, had been quote-unquote doctors, real doctors, people who had really had cannabis knowledge. It took someone outside of the industry who mainstream could relate to say something, and a lot of it was, of course, propelled by a lot of these children who, you can always appreciate some children getting healed. Sanjay Gupta saying he had made that big mistake was really the thing that made say, maybe there's something to this. And so I really appreciate media's value in that way, because no matter what I could say to my mom, Sanjay Gupta saying it was just so much more impactful.
Yeah, it's becoming very fashionable to tell the truth and talk about cannabis, because even look at Trump today. This is why he came up. They're all realizing if you talk about cannabis, a lot of people support the subject. And now that we're getting that voice, it's changing the whole situation. I hope more and more people get involved in actually trying to educate the people around them, because that's really what we need to have happen.
I think also media can help spread old knowledge. I mean, if you look at the book I'm holding, this was published in 1904 in Calcutta, and it's called The Morphology, Tetralogy, and Declinism of Flowers of Cannabis. And then if you turn inside, it's got drawings by Major Prain, the author, on every different abnormal sexual variety that there is. They already knew about Sinsemilla. They already knew about everything. And yeah, if we could just remember everything that we've forgotten, that would be a major step forward.
That's awesome. Of course you have that document. It's just like, let me just pull this document out from 1865.
I've also got, no, this is from 1904.
Oh,
from 1894 was the Indian Hemp Commission report. I've also got a bunch of original copies of that, and that is full of more information about marijuana and hashish than any other ancient document that I'm aware of. It's amazing.
Well, we got to get that printed up or posted up on Hash Church.
It's too long. It's I think 9 volumes, each one like 400 pages.
Awesome.
I'd love to have a friend of mine. His name's John Lupian. He's a researcher who took Jack's book back 20 plus years ago and actually took the references and researched them and went to 50 plus research facilities around the United States gathering hemp and cannabis information, and he's probably the foremost expert on it that I have ever known. And he's a fascinating guy, and he's working on a book, or has for like 20 plus years, but he has a great grasp on everything in American hemp, not necessarily hashish, but such as finding all the old decorticators, all types of patents, etc., etc. Just treasure trove of information this man is.
Doing the good work.
Yeah, for the good of all, because, you know, Jack started and planted the seed for all of us, which, of course, pretty much spawned everybody on the panel here. And so, you know, we have to take that, you know, a step further, you know, so that we can educate further. I credit Todd greatly with the movies to enter the knowledge into, you know, newer generations that would have never had access to the book, because it's out there, but it's not in the ether of circulation that, you know, the movie has, that it's now on what? It's on Netflix in what, 70 plus countries, both movies, Todd?
No, just the Culture High. It's in 15 languages now in 70 countries because of the work of Adam and Brad. You know, and this is the goal, to think that people are all over the world learning this and absorbing this information, and, you know, that's really my whole goal. I mean, really, I guess it was to get out of Kinko's and to be able to sit home and still have an impact on society.
And if you put next to that in this industry there is more misinformation than in all the industry put together, it's really a weird balance.
Our good information against their disinformation?
I mean, like there is so much misinformation about everything, processes, history. There is not one place like a data bank that you can trust and rely on, that The hash church for somebody like me, it's hard. I cannot watch it because I'm not somebody who hear. I need to read, and I don't have a place where I can trust what I read. I need to research. I need to question everything because there is so much misinformation, and especially the media and magazine.
Right. Well, that's why you try to pick the best folks out of the industry. I mean, it's why earlier when you were talking about your theory of cannabinoid increase through decarboxylation, you were guessing that was happening, but Sam was mentioning that he actually had shown that testing those products showed no higher cannabinoid content through decarboxylation prior to the inhalation. So it's like these are ways to do that research, and Hash Church is a great way to sort of link people up with being able to take notes and find a place to start, because you don't want to take anything we say just at heart. You want to take things that we say and people agree with them and they disagree with them, but I'll tell you, it definitely lights a fire under their ass, and they go and they research and they find things out, because often they'll be in the chat room the next week bringing up something from last week. Because by all means, like Sam says, it's not like we're experts. We just have knowledge in different fields. We all have passions, much like Frenchy, that are like fueling the knowledge that we're learning. But also like Rob Clark, who's photographed behind me here, he is always willing to admit that if what he learned was wrong, he's willing to change what he knows through that knowledge. And that's what research and evolution brings us. We constantly learn. When I first started making water hash, I wasn't doing it completely correctly, and I was definitely making some key mistakes that I'm very, very, very glad I was able to learn years later and fix.
As little as a generation ago, everybody thought that the cannabis first produced CBD, and then THC was biosynthesized from the plant from CBD. Then we eventually found out it was in fact CBG that this happens with.
Right, and I'm sure we'll find out more things in the upcoming 5 to 10 years, with programs like the genome, the genetic sequencing of cannabis, and all these different unique programs that are happening, or scientific papers that are being written. The knowledge is just coming. How often do you get a new paper on cannabis being written, Sam?
I get one pretty much every day. But one of the latest ones I got in the last few days was the one written by Dr. DeMeyer, where he explains the inheritance of the propyl homologs. In other words, THCV, CBDV, CBCV, and he explains how they're inherited, and it's quite a brilliant little paper, if I do say so myself.
Yeah, you were saying that the other day. That's another good one to check out. It's always good if we can get these papers linked, at least if we're talking about them, if they're available. It's always a great idea to get them linked into the Hash Church group so people can come check them out.
They're available. I'll put one up on. I'll put it up on Hash Church.
Yeah, that way people listening can go check out his latest paper. Tony's at 30-something. He says he's very high. His eyes are almost closed. He's.
I just wanted to add one thing to what you guys were saying on the marketing side, on a little more, because that was a really good macro. But I think that like what's happening is that even though rosin and that kind of stuff is gaining some popularity, it's still not very popular, even in California. Like, and if you look at the panel, each one of us is doing something really unique with resin, and Baroni's doing something, Bubbleman and I are doing something, and Frenchy's doing something, and West Coast, everyone's doing something very unique with the resin, and they're all keeping to the scripture within Hash Church, which is non-solvent. And the marketing that has to happen is going to come from those brands and those people and how they educate. And so I think that's what the next wave is you're going to see, is that as those brands represent a certain style of the resin that's being presented, they're going to have to help unite and push the information education along, because I talk to people and they still, I would say there's still 60-70% that are still into solvent-based products. So it's not like that. It's, for me, I don't see it as that big of a a thing yet, you know. So if you were talking about marketing, it's still got a long ways to go, and I think the individuals that specialize in products will be the ones that kind of push that education along and awareness.
To be honest, like, how many of us are so tired of hearing that marketing? Because the people that called water hash solventless and ignored the fact that water is a fucking solvent were marketing their shit against BHO, because people call all the hash the way they make it. It's dry sieve. It's butane hash oil. It is propane hash oil. It is CO2, except when we get to water hash, and all these people try to say solventless. And it's baloney. Water is a great solvent. I use it every day in the shower. A little soap, it does wonders.
Let's face it.
We're not talking. Yeah, I'm sorry, but we're not talking about just water hash. We're talking about rosin. Look what Chris did. He just pressed out a pound of rosin.
Less. And I mean, but that's the reality. If now to me, now that rosin's on the scene like it is, if you're not pressing it or you're not shaking it, I'm sorry, it's solvent.
It's not ice water extraction, it's ice water sieving. There is no need to say solventless because it confuses people. We do not extract, we sieve. Extracting, it's taking the resin from the membrane. That's extracting. So it's like we don't have a common vocabulary. How do you call loose resin?
I think that's a major thing, is we need to really work on the vocab, and we also need to work on just like the full, when we're rating things, like what's this star and what's that star, like what is that, like all of that is really, it doesn't make any sense. Like you have one product and you have another product. Like Frenchy has a product. It doesn't matter what star rating that is. I have a product. It doesn't matter what star rating that is. Is it full melt? Is it partial melt? Is it whatever? Is it this? Is it pressed? Is it?
Dare I say something? Dare it would be the onus is on the consumer, because when you walk into a supermarket, you know the difference between red wine, white wine, shitty red wine, good red wine, and that's
organic or non-organic. You know, when you go to the
supermarket,
supermarket, you have organic and non-organic, and I think to just defend Etienne, which is hilarious. I think he was coming at a place where it was all oil, it was all BHO, 90% of it. Maybe some people were making PHO and some other things, but most of what he was seeing was this oil, and he was like, I want to make a water hash version of like oil. I want to make a dabbable product. So he just called it solventless, and I know that Frenchy might think that confused people, but people were confused when he started selling that product, and they weren't sure that it was actually made with an oil because of the way it looks, or made with a chemical solvent. And most people aren't concerned whatsoever, but there are some people who go to the grocery store and they want to purchase organic food, and maybe solventless wasn't the best name, but it kind of ensued, the term basically was that there would be no chemical solvents used.
Yeah, but the thing is now people that make
I think that it means
solvents call it solventless when it's just because they purged it.
Of course, but people will bastardize anything regardless of what we call things or what we don't call them. People always.
That's actually supposed to be solvent free. Would be the term for that, not solventless.
I would agree with Tony, but I've seen it. But I've seen the misnomer cleanly all the time.
That's why it's so important to create a vocabulary.
I guess what I was talking about was what the original question was the difference between hash and rosin or oil. So that's really it. We're talking about hashish, or we're talking about oil, you know. And so rosin.
Here, because old hashish was made with sieving first, and then it was pressed.
It's sieved and pressed, hashish.
Well, before hashish was made from sieved, it was made from collecting on the fingers, I would guarantee, before they...
I think you're right. All right. I'm going to go with what Mark said. But then second, it would have been sieved.
Look, we don't know because as
you
far...
said it earlier, it's fingers.
No, what we're talking about is the definition of hashish versus the definition of if you don't want to call it solventless, you got to pick another name because it's coming from flowers or it's coming from hash, and there's no more cellulose. So the distinction between hashish and a hash oil, right, is what we were talking about earlier. And she was talking about marketing, and that's where the confusion comes. What needs to be separated, and those brands will have to come forward. Like Baroni has a very specific way, or what we're doing is specific, or what Frenchy's doing is very specific. And so those brands are going to come forward and say, okay, this is how this is done. You know, and that's, I think, going to be what's going to change the consumer.
But in some cases, those things will be secretive. Like, that will be things that will, like, not necessarily be privy to everybody, or you might want to know, but, like, you know, it's like, who knows exactly how he or she makes or does, like, the process. And there might be things that we don't even, like, some people won't even want to tell anybody, so it's going to be, you know, that'll be the interesting marketing play. Is it your secret? Is it like this big secret? Or is it just that the starting materials are good, or is it that you have some special process? I mean, it's just like you said, the marketing has become key. And I mean, I think you Tony, have, you know, you market a lot, and you've got brand penetration. You sell products that aren't cannabinoid rich, and how do you brand terpenes if it's cannabis related but not cannabis? And it's like that in itself, that's a challenge. You've got other people now coming out with, like, essentially selling terpene blends and doing stuff like that, and how does that relate to the industry, and how does that, you know, running parallel to, like, someone like, you know, in your other side, you're running and actually making hash. I'm making hash. Like, where's that like distinction? How do you brand something that's a legal product in every state that can cross lines, or how do you deal with that and its incorporation into products in different states? You know, someone's buying the terpenes, and maybe, like, in bringing that pound of outdoor that they had and bringing it to, like, a higher level, or they're, you know, I don't know. You know, it's just kind of like, what are the uses, the branding tools, who's marketing to, stuff like that. Not that I'm saying that, like, that's the MO. I'm not trying to, like, opinion say that people are doing stuff with terp, but it's just interesting. I mean, I noticed that you had some terps for B and C grade terps for sale. I'm curious what do you do with, what are the intended uses for something like that?
Well, I just put the grades on there because I want people to understand where it comes from. So it's kind of like if you're capturing something from fruit, or you're capturing something that has really nice sugar and little tiny buds. That's really what the grade is for. It's not necessarily that bad, but I use them for, and I kind of put that on the blog too, but I use them inside the candles, which that we are releasing. So that way the candles don't, yeah, he's got a candle. So if I had to do that from A grade, that candle would be astronomically priced, like ridiculous. So I created a kind of food grade or C grade where we can use them in candles and use them more into, like, aromatherapy and with diffusers. It's still really good. The quality is really good. It may not have, let's say, instead of 13 terpene profiles, I'm going to getting those tested now. I would imagine you might see more into 4 or 3, you know, just because it didn't come from like A grade flowers. But you could use them as a dilutant. There's nothing really wrong with them. You could dilute them in pens and stuff like that. It's just I'm just trying to offer something that has every grade, you know, and just like in the wine industry, you have those different grades. Just like you would see someone that says, hey, we sell 50 million cases of this, and we sell only 10 million cases of this, and we only sell 1,000 cases of that. And it's the same thing with the grades, you know. Just also a more affordable situation too.
That might have been an appropriate spot to yell bong rip, but I had my lips on my bong at the time, so sorry for really missing the cue there, everyone. I feel like I let the panel down. I think I'm going to quit Hash Church now and never do it again because I'm just such a failure at this whole thing. I can't make it happen, you know? Oh, I'm just joking.
All right, take a bong rip.
That's not my style. Just wanted to check out the self-pity angle just for a second. It's really not a very good look.
So from what I gathered earlier, there was a very strong reaction, and maybe I'm just ripped, but the word solventless is something that you guys don't want it to be used at all over there in the Frenchy camp. Just so I'm clear.
We're getting clear. We're getting clear.
There is dry sieve, there is ice water sieve, then there is extraction. There is rosin extraction, and there is extraction made with solvent, and it's all very different type of resin, different type of buzz. even if it came from the same trim.
I say truth in packaging. Call it what it is.
I think it's semantics. Yeah,
It's not semantics. It's just not giving them a general turn mark that they can just blanket over stuff. It's call it what it is. Tell me what it is.
Absolutely. I always said the same thing for food. You know, why do we have to call organic food that isn't grown with anything special organic when really the food that's full of poison, chemical poison, should be called chemical poison food, not organic food. Everyone would buy the food that didn't have the chemical poison sign over top of it. Holy shit. You'd have to be brain dead to go, I'm just gonna, these apples are so much cheaper. I know they have plutonium in them, but my God, they're so cheap.
Yeah, well, they suppress that information here in the United States. They want to just, every type of
here too
labeling for GMOs and things like that. You
remember it was a Canadian farmer who got sued by Monsanto.
Yep.
The Saskatchewan farmer who was like, because his corn got pollinated with their fucked up evil Frankenseed beans, and basically they were like suing him for producing their seed on his land when their pollen flew from a mile away and landed on his field and pollinated his corn to produce their seed. That's fucked up. That's why we really shouldn't. That's the dangerous game on allowing people to own seed rights. It's a scary game. Hey, Mr. Brett in the house, looking pretty stylish with the shades on and the pipe in the mouth.
Hey guys, I've been listening all morning driving around. It's been a great episode so far. One of my favorite for sure.
Excellent.
Nice to see the whole panel.
Yeah, nice little panel on here. It's been a pretty good conversation talking about, a lot of what we've been talking about for the last 15 or 20 minutes is really just semantics, the names, the solvent list or the non-solvent list. I think Todd pretty much nailed it. Call it what it is. If it was made with butane, put that on the packaging. If it was made with water, put that on the packaging. If it was dry sifted mechanical, put it on the package. If it was whole plant, fresh frozen, throw that on there too. Why not? It seems like the way Chimera mentioned it, soon the names of these cultivars will truly be a list of compounds or constituents that make up that product. That's what a real name will be in the future. We'll find out exactly, just like what Todd said, what is it? Oh, it's a sour diesel. No, what is it? Well, it's a ratio of THC versus CBD, a few other cannabinoids for good measure, and then there's a lot of myrcene and terpenoline, and those are the constituents that make up that product. Those should be the things that we associate with the names, and the more we get tested and the more we open ourselves to this information, the more we'll understand it.
Yeah, 100. I heard Adam talk a little bit about the star rating, and then it seemed to cut out in my car there. I just wanted to ask the panel, has anybody seen a 6-star hash that leaves no residue at all? Because I've never seen it.
Like nothing, like a clean nail.
And we've been trying, right? Like, we've been trying our hardest, and it just doesn't seem to happen.
No, I've seen one. I've seen something definitely for sure.
Was it made with, was it dry sift or was it bubble hash?
Oh, it was Emerald Alchemy's Purple Princess, and it was full spectrum. She'd been working with the strain for the last 2 years. She makes it by hand, and definitely every single time, even hitting it too high, there's just nothing there. Like nothing.
Here's something you have to do, Sheila, because it's never been shown online. No one's ever shown a video of a dab being taken with nothing being left behind. So if it happens every time, I'd love for you to make a little video.
Yeah, can you get that stuff?
Because I've seen damn near nothing, but I've never seen nothing. The only thing I saw leave nothing was a pure terpene rip that I did with Brett when we did our little terpene gauntlet. And sometimes even the terpene left a tiny little bit of residue. So,
okay, challenge accepted.
It's not like a call out or anything. We just want to see it, honestly.
No, I'll post it on my video. It's definitely not a call out. I believe her 100%.
Yeah,
come on and talk.
I just want to see it.
Challenge accepted. Challenge accepted.
Realize, guys, that your main conversation about quality is focused only about the melt and how much is left after smoking.
Yes.
We did come up in that.
But keep in mind, Frenchy, we come from a place where we smoked third world import hash, And one day this water hash showed up that was so incredibly different, we had to name it something different because it wasn't what we called hashish, because that was so contaminated with product that wasn't glandular resin heads, that when we finally got to this point, and nobody could deny the powerful difference between smoking some Moroccan and then taking like a full melt dab of like some 90 micron or some of Skunkman Sam's dry sift, it was almost a religious, definitely a spiritual experience for most people who experienced differences in those two products. So there was a very big stick that no one, you know, most of us had experienced this, and then all of a sudden we were experiencing this over here that was like, I mean, elevation-wise, it was 150 steps up from what we were used to as that product. So I think that's why people, the melt factor definitely.
Yeah, we just came up in that as well. I mean, for us anyways, our hash seemed to taste better and get better as the melt got better. I have yet to, you know, there's definitely some strains that leave a bigger residue that have such a great flavor, but for sure it still melts pretty good. It's not like an import that you can burn. But I've definitely tried your style of pressing my full melt out, leaving it for a couple days or a week or so, and then coming back and it expressing different flavors that I've loved. I've pressed full melt that I didn't like at first. A week later, I loved. So I completely agree with you for sure. But the melt factor still is.
You didn't get my meaning. It's like the melt is very important. It's how much resin is formed inside the resin head. But we don't really have a scoring system that take into account the degustation, the actual experience of smoking. Or that take into action how much cannabinoid is actually inside that melt, how wide the spectrum of cannabinoid, how much terpene there is. You count only the melt, and there is so much more to quality than the melt.
Well, most people don't have a gas chromatograph to test for those things. So you can talk about them, but you'll just be guessing. Whereas the melt factor is something that you can see and 100% know without a machine that it's like a 5 or a 6-star melt. Whereas terpene content, phytocannabinoid content, the amount of cannabinoids that you're actually saturating into your system while inhaling through whatever variation of form that you're inhaling through, those are things that you can experience through your bioassay, but you can't actually know them without testing in some form of a HPLC or gas.
Wait, Mark, let me ask you a question. If you bite into a nectarine and it is early, you can taste it. If you bite into a nectarine and it is ripe, you can taste it. So while you don't have the ability to test at that very moment, you can. Oh, yeah, it's definitely going to be an opinion.
You have different people, whereas the scientific methodology will not change. It will give you data
for sure.
that is exact. My son loves nectarines that are hard. I love nectarines that are soft.
Yeah, and
I totally agree with that. I'm not saying that there's actually a judgment to make on either side. I'm saying that you do have the ability to decide, and as you like, make your options, whether you're going to have the hard nectarine or the soft. But with that, it's not that science is giving you this like complete insight. At the very least, this is an experience that you're having. So your own body is telling you whether you like it or not. You don't need science to like decide whether it has enough of cannabinoids for you.
You need science to know what Frenchy was mentioning, what terpene profile is in there, what cannabinoids are in there, and what ratio. You can
exactly number, sure, yes.
But
that's why you have science. Yeah. You have science, and then the degustation part. How does it smell before you smoke? How does it taste your mouth? How intense it is? How long it stays in your mouth? How unique it is. All this is quality for me. It should be part of a scoring system so that since you cannot see and touch the hash you're buying, you need
ultimately, doesn't that go on the grower?
A lot of dimension of what is quality for the people to have an idea of why that hash is priced that way. And if you could give a description of how it will taste also, it would be super nice. So that a person can not only appreciate the melt, but you make him think about the experience of it. Something that we forget because we smoke so much every day, most of the time we forget to appreciate every dimension of what makes it so incredible. And this is part of what a scoring system should be, because it's teaching.
Well, you should create that scoring system. Create the Frenchy Canoli scoring system that's based on that very thing, and we'll all get right behind it.
I wrote an article in Weed World about it, and it's on my website. It's like I like people to make it better, because I'm just narrow-minded, because I'm me and my education and my culture and my experience, but it's something we need, because we are going into legality. We need a common language. How do we call loose resin head? If hashish is pressed resin, how do we call loose resin head? Keef, ice wax, beach sand, grease. There is so many names, but we are becoming legal. It's going to be a worldwide market. We need to put our shit together. Excuse my English.
Well, I think that's part of the branding too. You know, you have to make a name for yourself to brand your own product, and to kind of call your product something to separate it from what other people have. You know, I mean, ice wax or solventless wax or any of those things. That was all. Wax was a craze. Wax was a thing, you know. What we were saying earlier, the difference between hash and oil, there really isn't a difference. Pure hash is oil. It will be an oil. Pure hash will melt to an oil. Pure glandular trichome heads of the finest quality, I guess maybe, will melt to an oil.
Yeah, but they're slightly different.
Sorry.
One difference is that heads, if they're 99% pure, are micro-encapsulated heads.
Yep. Yeah, there's definitely that fibrous mat where the cannabinoids are biosynthesized in the upper cuticle of the trichome head. There's wax. There's the wax membrane. There are things that are present in the hash that are not present in the oil.
Exactly.
So from that perspective alone, I think they're different.
Yeah, well, what's funny is we actually started trying to make full melt with a full spectrum. We only recently, within the last 6 to 8 months, have switched over to using all of the bags to try and separate things out. And just personally, I would say that we both, and the people we deal with, are definitely finding they want a separated spectrum. So it's definitely, I think it's about where you live. I think it's about the cultivars you're using. I think it's about the marketing as well. Obviously, if you are marketing one thing, that is who is going to come towards you, right? So it's hard to say. If you want to offer both products, you should do that. If you want to offer one or the other, you should do that as well, and try and make a niche in what you're doing. But also with the melt itself, for us at least, we look at it as how well of a job did the grower do? Yeah. If it melts all the way and there's nothing left, or close to nothing, it's hard to say anything about that. However, obviously, when you press your hash out and you do all these other things to it, you can obviously bring out other flavors and other effects as well. So it's really just it's also subjective.
And we also come from the school of Mark Bubbleman telling us, we're just really unveiling. You can only be so proud of what you do until you go to the grower and say, you did the great job. I just did what I do every single day, and it turned out better than it normally does. And I mean, yeah, that's where we come from.
Yeah, shout out to the grower always, for sure. And you know what, I guess when it comes to these ratings and such, when the Bizarre Brothers and Jeff Church kind of came up with the star rating, they did it because people were selling non-melty bubble hash as melty bubble hash. So they didn't create it really as a marketing ploy as much as just to try and unconfuse some people who weren't familiar with when you've never seen melty hash and you see something that sizzles, like almost looks like it just has water coming out the top of it, you think that's melty hash. And then the next time when you see something that it goes beyond sizzling, it actually boils up like lava kind of slowly, it gets bigger, and then you think that's full melt. And it's not until you get to the level where you see something that turns into a liquid and drips right through whatever surface area you're trying to smoke it on that you kind of get to this conclusion of like, oh, okay, so there's there's levels in all of this. You know, there are levels of the quality, the maturity, the ripeness of the gland, and when you can separate it out and isolate it out to the way that you like it, it's revelatory.
Yeah, and that's why, like, I love the star rating system. I just don't love that a lot of people tag 6-star, and 6-star says there's no residue, and there's always seems to be residue left. So, you know, that's why you see me and Adam say 5-star a lot of the times, unless it's so exceptional that and we always say it leaves residue. We're never ones to say there's nothing left. All of our hash seems to leave a very, very minimal amount of residue.
But there's still something.
Yeah, there's still something. And also the star rating is good because if I went to send my mother to buy, you know, a gram of full melt at a dispensary, you know, they have things that are labeled full melt that are very, you know, very like 40% melt. So she could figure that out very quickly by, you know, hitting it with a hemp wick and seeing how good that melt is. So I just like it because it's educated, like it's easy to educate.
It's a basis.
But I understand what you're saying, Frenchy, in terms of, you know, it's so much more complex than just the melt, for sure.
There's a problem, though, if there's no standard datum line for where we consider the star system, what you consider 4-star, someone else might consider 5-star, and therefore there is no education. So until there is an actual standard that we all
there is guidelines that we've
keep in mind who came up with the star rating, okay? The people who came up with it, Jeff Church, Bizarre Brothers, they've been making water hash for almost as long as anyone's been making water hash for. They started in the late 90s. Jeff was one of the first bubble ambassadors. He was a glass blower that Marble Slinger introduced me to. He brought bubble bags to California, 30, 40 kits at a time. He would like put it on his mom's Visa and buy, in the 90s, he would buy these bags. And so he had access, I'll say this much, if you knew him from Overgrow or IC Mag, he always posted the utmost incredible quality. It was always full melt, super crazy colors, just unbelievable. He really was one of the keys to the business being successful, because it wasn't people who were taking subpar material and making subpar hash that were popularizing water hash. Those people were not popularizing water hash. It was people who had access to incredible genetics and growers who would like run that shit through the bags and then be like, oh my God, I didn't realize, but I just made the holy grail of hash. And the Bizarre Brothers, I mean, it's you know, there's a reason why the Bizarre Brothers washed for the Bubbleman brand down in California. They are bubble ambassadors. These guys do 15, 20, 30-pound washes at a time in huge conical spheres. They know how to separate. They know how to isolate. They know how to dry and cure properly. And yeah.
I've definitely had their hash, and I ask them all the time, how do they make this relatively like small batch quality doing such huge numbers and such like that. So are you saying there's a chart? Am I missing out? Have I been missing out on the chart?
Well, I don't think you're missing out so much, but it's, you know, it's for people that don't know that much about it, that haven't seen all the, you know, it's not until you see a 6, a 5, a 4, a 3, a 2, and a 1 that you'll know. You can't just see a 3-star and then guess what a 2 and a 1 and a 4 and a 5 and a 6 are going to be. You really have to experience them all. I never personally came up with the star rating, and I've been making bubble hash as long as anyone, but I do kind of stand behind their star rating in the sense that it just gives people kind of like what Todd was saying, even though it is an opinion, but it's the opinion of what I would call the water hash community's peers. These are ambassadors. These are the people who have been doing it almost as long as you could possibly be doing it. And I sort of stand behind the knowledge that they've learned. They've taken the right path. You can tell when you smoke their final product, when you smoke their hash, that they are aware of what they're doing.
Yeah, I totally
One
agree.
thing that does need to be done is that if you're going to have a 5, 6-star system, you need a constant way of consuming it. In other words, a nail at a certain temperature or whatever, so that that isn't a variable.
Of course, and for us, we do only make rosin out of our hash, so that has taught us a lot, and made me respect the star system more because that just validates it as well. You know how much rosin you get back. Obviously, it's strain dependent, but that will teach you a lot about the star system. Plus, you can just smoke it before you rosin it, and quickly understand like, yeah, that's got half the oil in it. It doesn't taste as great. I was smoking on the the same nail, the same temp. It took 5 times longer to melt, and then it becomes just such a more enjoyable product as rosin. It definitely validates the star system for me.
Have you guys looked at terpene profile before and after that to look at what the rosin process is doing on that?
We personally haven't, but I was privy enough to see some of Tony's results, and he was talking exactly about that. So I'm sure he would touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if they're public on SC Labs. I tested the full melt, and then we tested the rosin directly from the full melt. So both of those are side by side.
So what would you see the differences in, Tony? Are you seeing levels of certain terpenes change between one and the other?
Yeah, so what happens, let's say you start with 10 different profiles that are pinged in the full melt, and you have like a 4% in the full melt in the terpene, so I think that's what it was, like 4.5. And so you increase the THC, and instead of having 4% of, say, 10 terpenes, you get 7% plus of 3 terpenes.
So which terpenes do you see the biggest changes in?
Yeah, let's see if I can pull it up. Let me see if I can pull this up.
Cool.
This is 30-something dabs in, so... See here.
Did you stop? You've been 30 dabs in for a while.
That's so respectable, Tony. I actually thought last night, I was like, should I roll up 90 little dabs and then just dip them in terps and do it? And I was like, that would be very excessive. So I really appreciate you doing it. And I'm going to just try and catch up. I'm on 3rd, and you're at 30, so...
Listen, I did 18 dabs with D420K when we did the gauntlet, the terpene gauntlet, but we were dipping rosin dabs into terpenes for our gauntlet, unlike the one I did with Brett, which was just pure terpenes, and we did a dozen different kinds. 18 rips between the two of us took us 50 minutes, and that was like one of us taking a dab every 2 minutes. And it just annihilated and destroyed us. I'll tell you one thing. You definitely are not getting the subtle nuances that Frenchy's talking about in his rating system when you're dabbing 18 dabs in an hour. There's definitely, like, better to probably take one nice big rip or a big, real nice smoky. I mean, there's another thing I would ask Frenchy. Do you prefer, I mean, I'm sure you have a variety of preference, but obviously you must smoke chillums, having spent time in India. And the chillum hit is unlike really any other hit. It's got this, often it's mixed with tobacco, which gives you this real kind of spacey buzz, kind of zings you right up there, and then you kind of float on the hash high that you have. I'm not a real big tobacco proponent, but when in Rome, I felt like when I was in the Maha Kumbh Mela in Haridwar at the banks of the Ganges, smoking with the Babas that I had met, due to them smelling our Nepali finger hash that we had smuggled into the country. We had a very good relationship with these guys. They love to smoke the hash. Do you prefer a big blast and then to enjoy these feelings, or do you just take, regular old size hits and then enjoy your feelings?
I like to eat ash already. Most time I eat some ash in the morning with my coffee. And then I just like to be in that comfort, cozy feeling that ash give me. And for me, smoking ash, it's really the senses. It's the taste, how it's the degustation part of it. That's why I really totally agree with. We need a scoring system that is really developed because the quality of everything is so much higher than in history where they didn't use a star system, but they use grade, first grade, second grade, third grade, that where you could really, the difference were obvious. Now there is so much diversity in quality to a certain level that we need a scoring system that expresses everything of that experience.
Right.
It's beyond what history teach us quality was. It's coming into another kingdom of quality, if I may say so.
Beautiful. Well, we got a nice full group. Johnny B just popped in. How's it going, Johnny B, with the 90 micron shirt?
90 micron, of course, and the hash. I had to make some, and you know what? I just made some hash, and it was some weed that's been in the freezer since 2015, almost a year. And let me tell you, the difference between making hash weed that's been in the freezer for like a week or a year is really, it makes a difference. I'm seeing it totally.
What are you finding, Johnny?
Pardon me?
What are you finding the difference to be?
Just overall, I'm finding. And
how cold does your freezer get, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah,
Is
my
it just
freezer
normal
is
freezer?
not cold, and that's one thing I found. I've been, of course, making hash since, of course, Mark showed me a better way of making it was just being more thorough with it, and I make so much of it, and I'm just seeing a difference from when I leave it in the freezer for longer, and I'm just finding it's just tastier, and just it hits me better. It's going to be a difference in the conversion or something, but it's maybe less water in the fresh frozen, because this is fresh weed that I'm putting in the freezer, of course. Right?
Yeah.
So I think over time, the freezer is getting rid of a lot of the moisture, so I'm getting I don't know. It's definitely different.
Yeah, I don't know. Personally, we've found the quicker we've run it, the better tasting. For our situation, and I don't know if that's the way we're storing it versus the way you're storing it, how cold your freezer is versus how cold ours is, strain dependent, of course.
Are you testing both, Brad? Are you actually allowing some to cure out? Because we talked about the terpenes sort of earlier, in the sense that when you do a fresh frozen, or when you smell bud that hasn't been cured yet, or hash that hasn't been cured, it has, there are people that's what they're looking for. They love that grab by the throat and that sort of But there's also, when you allow those to cure out and get rid of them, and actually dry the material and get it ready for processing, that you find, not every time by any means, but sometimes you can find that it's a much softer, smoother hit on the throat when you actually vaporize or smoke the final product. You definitely get a lot less whiting out as well, without even the use of a freeze dryer, when you use material that's been, I wouldn't say completely dry, but maybe just like somewhat cured before processing, because a lot of people are just processing fresh frozen material these days.
Yeah, for us, we mainly just process fresh frozen, because every time we do process dry, or did, we just find it better as rosin. Like for us, there was just no denying, and that could just be the process, the area we had to dry, the cold room we had to dry, which me and Adam would seem to think that'd be a big reason. But yeah, so for us, we just haven't had as enjoyable hash made from dry material. Like I have yet, I would love to try it. I'm definitely not opposed to smoking good hash. I love smoking good hash. I go buy good hash at a dispensary, but I've yet to see anything that's full melt, that's not fresh frozen.
The first real full melt I ever made, well, it was shishkin berry. It was definitely bone dry material. All of the material I used back in the day was bone dry. But the first stuff that blew me away for taste and smell was the Rene. And the Rene was, I remember it was swept up. My buddy brought me to his show. It was like a 50 lighter, which back then in the 90s it was pretty big. 50 lights was pretty impressive for a grow. And he had all this stuff sort of like just on the ground. It was like trim and popcorn bud, and then there was actually towards the edge of it it looked like dust, but it was like sift. So I got down on my hands and knees, and I had a little pack of rolling papers on me that I opened up, and I kind of scooped a little bit of this sift from the top that was the cleanest I could find in the pile on the ground, and I put it in a rolling paper, and I brought it home and I smoked it. And first of all, it smelled so fruity and incredible, but when you burned it, it created this flavor profile that was super hazy, super terpineol, like just unbelievable exotic spice in the air. and the first time I made bubble hash from it was no different. It came out like stained glass window. It's what popularized bubble bags as much as guys like Jeff Church and the Bizarre Brothers and other people being ambassadors. I'm not sure it would have ever been quite as popular without the photography behind it, because back then on Overgrow it was, you could tell stories all you wanted, but mostly with the advent of the internet and digital cameras, people wanted proof. They wanted to see what you were saying. Not only could it be replicated, but you could show us what you were making, and that changed the game for people building their own grows, processing their own hash, you know, these little essays, photo essays that people would make.
If I had to give my inspiration to one photo, it would be your photo of Skunkman's dry sift on ICMake. As soon as I seen that, I knew I was doing something wrong. I was like, oh my God.
That photo was a game changer in a sense for.
And I made melty dry sift before I ever made melty bubble. And by no means, I tried making bubble before, and then I got discouraged and made melty dry sift, and then I went back to making bubble. Because it was just something you could obtain in quantity. You know, it wasn't so time consuming, and you know, you could help more people doing it, I would say.
Yeah, in a shorter period of time, I would agree with that for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so you know what? We haven't done a really good dab yet, and this is some 90 that I was working on. It's nice. Fire. And
there's not a good dab yet. Tony's done 36.
I even missed that. I didn't hear what you said. I was like, ah. But I mean, really, I made this, and 2 days ago, I put it in the sieve. I put it in the pizza box. I threw it in my other room, and this is like just fire. I can play with this now. I can pick it up. I can hold it in my hands. I mean, that's been in the freezer for a year before I actually made it. And that's what I mean. If I made it with fresh, it would be a lot more gooier. If I made it, I just see a little bit of a difference, and I'm quite happy, actually. I mean, it's just because I left it in there, right? But
we'll dab it up.
Let's do a dab, guys.
Dab it up. Down for the dab. Ronnie B inspired dab. What are you puffing on there, Dab Logic? Some ice oil from the lab? Booyah! Booyaka!
Rosin?
I'm talking about. Mine's not quite as yellow.
So tasty. It's amazing. And so smooth. Like, that was a big dab. That was like awesome.
Melts in your bowl, not in your hands.
But there is some residue, of course. It's
There's always residue. There's more, and then there's less.
Yeah.
But there's never none.
Well.
Never for us.
That's more accurate.
No, that
Sorry,
is through fire.
Hey, Johnny, in your text to me, did you say that you tested different micron size for THC content and saw trends in size as opposed to THC content? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so, I mean, I have tested the Jamaican bubble, the 73, 90, 120, and I saw a difference in THC, the same profile. It always looked the same, but the THC levels were different, and I was kind of looking for some more information on that, and I remember when I was working with Paul and stuff, we never tested different micron levels. We would just test hash. We weren't looking at that. So I always made mention and talked about, I mean, we get different hits from all the different levels. Like, for me, the 73 was always my golden, I would say. And I see, like, when I do testing, and, I mean, it's just the machine I'm working on and stuff like that, but I do see a different in cannabinoid levels. So that's the only difference, and I wanted to ask, like, Sam about that, and yourself. I mean, have you tested it? Do you see the different levels of THC and cannabinoid but the profiles are the same? You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I found the same thing. I found the same compound, just the ratios were slightly altered.
Exactly. So I saw in the 73, 90, and 120, the 90 had more THC, but the 73 had more of all the cannabinoids itself, but a lesser THC than 120. Do you recall seeing that?
What? I don't remember the exact details, and we were looking at primarily just THC and the terpenes because my varieties had practically nothing else. But they didn't have hardly any CBD or other cannabinoids. I mean, tiny amount of THCV or CBG or something like that. But not.
Considering your perspective on CBD from the recreational standpoint, I'm not overly surprised that your strains weren't super high in CBD.
But yeah, no.
Are you trying to say that I think CBD is the devil?
I know you do.
Hey, here's a question
only from a recreational point of view.
Exactly.
From a medical point of view, it's been a savior.
Well, then on speaking of a downer, right, Sam? I'm gonna be like, hey guys, thank you. We had a great time doing this today. We are gonna go eat food and do stuff.
Enjoy the rest of your day, gentlemen. You guys look. I like that. You guys look like you're wearing the same shirts and stuff. You're almost like connected on the black couch.
Yeah. Whoa, I'm gonna grow up to be more like Frenchy for sure.
I like
it.
it.
Loud.
Well, thanks for coming on and sharing your guys' perspective. We always appreciate it. Do you want to tell people where they can find you, Frenchy, and see your new rating system and whatnot?
My website, FrenchyCanoli.com, and there you can get, there is link to all my article and references and everything, literally.
Perfect. We will direct people there. Of course, Todd can be found at HempXXX on Instagram, and he's got a variety of websites you can share if you like, Todd.
Thanks, man. Well, love to y'all, and I hope y'all have a great day.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys.
Cheers.
Much appreciation. Well, we rocked out 3 hours and 45 minutes so far in the Hash Church 90 Micron episode. Lots of good conversation has happened. Maybe Chimera's going to come join us for the last 10 or 15 minutes. Oh, no, Wook Sauce has made it in. Wook Sauce Winery. Talk about squeezing. Chimera's going to come join us for the last 10 or 15 minutes. Mute the YouTube so it's not coming through your camera and see if you can turn your camera on.
Hey, I'm going to head out too because I'm actually joining them for all going to lunch. So
Nice.
I love you guys. Much love, and I shall see you all next week.
Enjoy. Etienne, thanks for sharing your time with us, buddy. We'll see you next week.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Finally got to hop in.
You got your camera working, or is it not working?
Yeah, no, I think the camera is just broken on this computer, straight up.
Well, at least we can hear you, dude. I wanted to give you a little bit of a shout-out. I wanted to give everyone a shout-out. We're actually just at the end of the episode, kind of shouting out where people can find us and whatnot. Of course, Dab Logic can be found as Dab Logic on Instagram. I don't think there's any dots or underscores. Is there, Dab Logic, for you?
Sorry, no. It's just straight Dab Logic on Instagram. You can also find us on Facebook under Dab Logic with a space in between.
Excellent. Well, you guys are definitely what I would call respectable bubble ambassadors, doing good by the art form. It's nice to see people producing the good meds. In Colorado, I know the Melts, Trichome Heavy Extracts are out there doing it, and it's nice to see that there are other groups out there doing it as well.
Yeah, a lot of good hash starting to pick up in Colorado, and a lot of the different things are doing good. So.
Well, it's good to see. It's definitely, I'm always paying attention myself for my own brand, where the fire's being produced.
No, absolutely. I know a lot of fire out in California as well. And
yeah, well, I invited Full Flavor in today. He wasn't able to make it in, unfortunately. I invited Solventless Mind, who we'll have to have come in another day and talk about what he's been doing, because he's been doing some inspirational things on Instagram. Wook Sauce I just literally discovered on Instagram the other day when I posted who was making great hash on Instagram, and a couple of people linked him up, and he had some really nice photos going as well. So what is the Instagram exactly? Is it Wook Sauce Winery?
Yep, just Wook Sauce Winery, all one word. And yeah, we just started up down in California, so that's why you haven't seen us before, really.
Awesome. Well, it's nice to see. I love the new guys. You know, I have a real affinity just meeting the West Coast Concentrate guys in the last year or so. They've only been making hash for, I think, maybe 2 years. which is incredible considering it goes to show you that you don't have to have 15 years background if you learn from the right sources and you use the right tools, and most importantly, you have great growers. You can really turn out some incredible fire.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. The quality that started coming out of my bags when I started putting my own material through there and stuff and doing the whole process top to bottom definitely made a big difference.
Yeah, it's why Cuban shines himself. You know, if you can control the grow and the resin, you're in a much better situation than you will be if all you're doing is processing, because at that point you just have to go through so many different people, and you have to go and look and try and make sure that one person that may not have grown good enough material for you, that you still give a chance next time around, because they could hit that sweet spot next time, and you don't want to miss out on processing that incredible resin. Hey, welcome, Chimera.
Howdy.
Glad you made it in, dude, towards the end of the 90 micron episode. I hope you have some 90 micron hash to enjoy.
I do, actually. Yeah.
I have to roll over and get some more. Got the 90 micron bags hanging in the back.
Oh, going for the biggins too. I like that. Biggins. Setting it all up. He's like, oh, Hash Church, I better set up these 90 micron bags. Tony, myself, and John were like, we better put these 90 micron shirts on for the episode.
You know, we have to. Maybe it hasn't been given the proper props, but Bubble Bags has to have the props for this episode. You know,
it does.
90 micron hash.
My favorite bag.
Shirt, 90 micron bag.
Give thanks. Give thanks. I just can't ever really promote my own shit. You know.
You don't need to.
Don't forget the 90 micron Sam I am.
I would never forget 90 micron Sam I am. He's had the same dumb look on his face all episode. It's like he knows something we don't know.
He definitely does.
He's smirking like a motherfucker.
He thinks that 90 micron is the best.
Well, he's obviously had 90 dabs. Look at him.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to look like in another 41.
We also have to give good props to Sam, and this paper that came out recently, this inheritance paper that he talked about, is a major accomplishment as far as our understanding of the inheritance of chemical chemotype in cannabis, at least for the cannabinoids. And none of that work would have been possible without Sam's efforts. So.
Yeah, was it all done with his varieties, I guess?
Yep, everything.
Figured.
His varieties, his breeding plan, his vision, and.
What's with writing papers and not, like, I don't know, maybe it's not a big deal, like maybe it's something that they don't do in the scientific world, but in the cannabis world, we like to give credit where credit is due. Wouldn't it be nice to see Sam's name on the paper, like, and all cultivars bred and produced by?
Well, yeah, the founder, the original collection that did all the work was created by Sam, and don't be mistaken. Sam's name is on many scientific papers, all in the field.
Just not on that one.
Not on that one, but in the original ones in that series of papers, and it's very clear anyway where the work came from. I know Sam's codes for his in-house codes, and they explain the codes that they use in the paper.
It's usually clear where my photos came from, but I still like to get recognition. Just with a name, it's just like, just put my name on it if it's my photo. If it's Sam's work, put his name on it. It's an easy thing to do. If it couldn't have been done without him, too, it seems like a pretty valid name to put on the paper.
Yeah, well, that or not, I mean, just for the historical record, we know that's the way.
We know. And now 10,000 people know as well, or at least they will in the next 7 days when they watch this show.
You can't ever get an attaboy. Attaboy, Sam.
Attaboy!
Nonetheless, like an epic paper that really explains everything as far as how chemotype is inherited. So.
And that one's going to be posted in
check it out.
I think they're posting it in Hash Church group on Facebook.
Cool. So if you're into that, check it out. It's a good read.
That's Etienne DeMeyer?
Etienne DeMeyer from GW.
Etienne DeMeyer. Excellent. Well, he knows his shit.
Yeah, I can't thank Sam enough. That one picture of the dry sift that you took basically changed my life.
Yeah, it pretty much started us off.
You know, I knew that that picture would change people's lives, and yet I was so like nervous back then because I was just like, I didn't want to offend Sam. I looked up to him. I was happy that we were developing a friendship. I definitely knew how private he was. You don't really want to pull out cameras around him. You definitely don't want to take his picture, back then especially. So I was kind of like, I remember the day I was like, okay, I'm in his house, like, should I just ask him if I can photograph it? I mean, fuck, it's sitting right there. Like, there it is. It's right there. It's there. It's right there. I got my camera. It's there. It's right fucking there. And I asked him. I said, Sam, can I take a photo of the hash? And he's just like, yeah, whatever. I'm like, okay, now I realize I need to take a picture of it before he smokes it all. Because he's literally smoking at 55 miles an hour and not any less. He's just like, boosh, boosh, jaboosh, jaboosh. And so I get the camera all set up, and I pull out the hash. I didn't spend too much time shooting, but I'll never forget the sound I made in my head when I photographed that picture. And it wasn't that I thought it was a monetary value, but literally when I photographed the first one and it showed up on my screen a second later on the screen, I literally in my head went, cha-ching! Like it was just the most incredible money shot ever. And it was really the beginning of my macro career because I believe that was 2008, the year that I got my macro lens in November at the Cannabis Cup when I first photographed Sam's most incredible, out-of-this-world hash.
Yeah.
Photography is like Coyote and the Roadrunner. You know, that was the time you caught the Roadrunner.
Yeah.
You know, in your head, you're like, ching ching.
You know what? The photography was like the 90 micron bag. It was the unveiling of the quality. It allowed me to unveil the quality. It was a prosthetic, much the way the bags are a prosthetic for us to isolate and extract resin glands. The camera was a way for me to isolate an image that my eyes just couldn't get. I couldn't see that close with my eyes. I needed this incredible powerful macro lens to do it. So Tony just recently got the same lens, so it's going to be exciting. This week, actually, I want you guys all to stay tuned. It's going to go up live. I don't know when, but it'll go up through Facebook, and it will be a Bubbleman MPE macro episode. I'm going to invite Todd. I'm going to invite Dynasty Genetics. I'm going to invite Shale. I'm going to invite Adam from DNA. I think Dane might have gotten the lens. We're going to have a really nice panel of people who have been shooting with the lens for a decade plus and people who just got the lens. I didn't realize how much I know about this lens until I started explaining it to Tony the other day on the phone. I think that all of these other panelists will have just as much to offer, and it should be an incredible episode if you want to gather knowledge on taking macro photographs of all things cannabis.
And when is this?
This will happen this week, probably between Tuesday and Thursday. I'll try and make it happen, but I don't have an actual date worked out because trying to get the panel all organized is more difficult than it would sound.
Yeah, that's amazing. I can't wait to see what comes from that because good pictures of hash are really what keeps this thing going. Without that, it's hard to see what we're doing.
So that
was my inspiration too. Just what you did for in the photography world was you created intimacy between our obsession with resin. When we thought we couldn't get any closer, you brought us in closer, and like I was like, oh wow, there's one little head. Oh, there's lots of little heads. Look how clear and amazing those are. And it makes you want to, like you said, it's the unveiling. You want to see like how good the resin is. You put it under the macro, and it'll tell you everything.
More than anything else was the mere fact that it was living proof that it could be done.
Bingo. Exactly.
Yeah, as well.
That's it. It was living proof that it could be done, and it changed the game in a variety of ways because not only did you get this group of people that wanted to experience the 99.9% hash, but in order to share it properly, you also needed to learn how to take a proper photo of it. So it became this sort of dual sort of things that you needed to master. You needed to simultaneously learn photography and how to shoot this resin while also being able to make and unveil that sort of quality or purity in the first place, not quality, sorry. We as hash makers do, we
Or you
unveil.
make a partnership where one person makes it and the other person takes it.
Absolutely, and that happens as well. It's just nice, like Wook was talking about, when you can control everything in house, and I don't just mean the growing to the hash making, but also the photography. You allow yourself to achieve a level of excellence that would be hard to be achieved otherwise when you can control all those factors.
Yeah, definitely.
Was that coincidence or was that predestination? You know,
It was predestination. You know, on that note, it's 1 o'clock here on a Sunday afternoon. Beautiful sunny day here in BC. I got the boat in the water. I think I might go put my family in there and float around for a while and appreciate my health and my family. And just, you know, every day live your life like it's your last. Crazy shit is happening out there in the world. Not sure if you guys heard yesterday. Pretty horrible mass shooting. People are losing their lives every day. We're all blessed to be here and share this information, and I want to thank each and every one of you, from Dab Logic to Chimera to Sam the Skunkman, Johnny Berfelo, Mark Scialdone, the Dank Dutchess, Tony Verzura, the West Coast Concentrate Boys, Brett and Adam, Wook Sauce Winery for making it in right towards the end, of course, Frenchy and Todd, E420K, and anyone else that was in here earlier that I missed. I do appreciate it. Hash Church 90 in the bag. All you got to do is scoop it out. Peace out, everybody.
Peace.